Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, judging on the end of the game between the Eagles and the Cowboys, it seemed to me that Dak Prescott was truly trying to get the spirit of Dante Culpepper in him. And if he was going to lose, he was going to go down in flames and just start throwing bombs that were very nearly picked off multiple times.
Not his fault. No, he played outstandingly. You have one contested throw to a tight end, and then you have like 3 drops from your star receiver. No, that's how you have to play that. You have to play that high risk, high reward, and I don't know, man. He gunned it in there. That's got to be one of the better bad stat games I've ever seen.
He was certainly trying. You cannot say that Dak Prescott was going to just let this one go. Nope, he was trying to will this thing into existence. He just didn't have the supporting cast to do so. Good on AJ Brown.
They had a superstar on their team like 2 weeks ago. Whatever happened to that guy?
That's an excellent question. For another time. Also, shout out to AJ Brown, who got one catch.
1 catch, 8 yards. That's 1.8 fantasy points, right? That's great.
That stuff adds up. Not immediately, not this week, but it adds up, and that's important. And with that, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. The season has kicked off. We have a game to preview. We're going to bring on Lorin Cox here in just a moment to preview the Bears game. But before we do, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode for $3.50 a month or a little less for the year subscription. You get access to the Discord, the bonus episodes, all that. Special thank you to a couple people. I almost missed the people who signed up last episode, so I'm just going to put them in here as well, just at the very beginning. Special thank you to Kevin O'Quigley, Heathen.
You were about to pronounce that Heather. I love that.
I triple checked it, it just wasn't going to happen. Heathen.
Yeah.
Alex Stevenson, Mitchell Kane, Darren McGuire, and Michael Dahlstrom. Thank you guys so much for subscribing over on Patreon. You can also go to PayPal.
Hey, if that's the Alex Stevenson that did speech at Egan High School way back when, thanks for subscribing. F you, dude. I hate you so much.
Well, we've already got us 350. So patreon.com/NorseCode. You too can be verbally accosted by Arif in a very possible chance of mistaken identity. So patreon.com.
I mean, if it's a different Alex Stevenson, we're cool. You're cool. Change your name, but you're cool.
PayPal.me/NorseCode as well. For a one-time donation. I'm attempting to start the show.
Just gonna roll through it.
I'm just gonna roll through. Arif's gonna be berating the next person I bring up too, I'm sure. And then you can go to norsecode.threadless.com for any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise. Next person I'm bringing up is Lorin, so I'm giving you a moment to figure this out.
No, we're good.
No, you're good there?
Like an hour and a half of his time.
Fantastic. So we are going to just get into the show. We know that you want to hear about the Bears previews. We're going to do that right now. Friend of the show is going to be coming on here to discuss it. Lorin Cox, Locked On Bears, is going to be on here, so check it out. We will see you in time for the mailbag.
I'm here with, to my knowledge, the only Bears podcaster in existence. The only guy that we bring on for Bears podcasts, I think. Wait, have you ever canceled and you recommended? This is Lorin Cox, by the way, Cox Sports One. Yeah. Have you ever canceled on us? Have you had to recommend a guy to us?
I don't have any memory of doing so, but I can't claim a perfect record either. I'm not sure.
Sure. I mean, James would know better, right? He keeps track of this kind of stuff, and I don't. Actually, earlier this week, James was like, "Hey, did you get a guest this week?" He asks every week, which honestly, him asking is generous enough because it should just be, "Hey, man, get a guest." And this week, I was like, "Yeah," I reached out to Lorin, and he was like, "I'm so proud of you, man. We've been doing this show for 12 years."
Finally got it.
Finally got it, man. How's it going?
It's going well. There's a lot of angst around what this season's going to bring for Bears fans, but we're going to learn. Is that
different? When's the last time that there wasn't angst? Like 2011?
Well, let me put it differently, I guess. Like angst is maybe not the right word. Like there's a lot that we just like don't know and we got to see and figure out. And I feel like in the past there's been like more of like, oh, we have a specific expectations for what exactly, like, oh, it's year 3 of Matt Eberflus or it's X, Y, or Z, right? We kind of know it doesn't always go that way, but with Ben Johnson right now, it's like we just have so much is going to be brand new and different, and we don't have a lot to know what to expect because it's not going to be the Lions offense. It's going to be a new version of the offense. We don't know exactly what that's going to be. And Dennis Allen's defense, there's some real question marks. We don't know exactly what's going to be. So there's just a lot of like, we're optimistic, but we don't know what really to expect.
Okay. Yeah. Optimistic, but don't know what to expect. Perfect start to a season. Great. So I'm going to ask you to tell us what to expect. Yeah, I guess like the top level question though is like this Ben Johnson question that you kind of referenced. Like, obviously, I don't think anyone expects Caleb Williams to play like Jared Goff, which would then mean that we wouldn't expect precisely the same offense or exactly the same offense. But, we've seen a little bit of it or you maybe have seen, or Bears people have seen a little bit of it in camp, and then we've seen a little bit of it in the offseason. It still does seem to be, just like the Lions, a timing-oriented offense, which kind of works in interesting ways, I think, with the way we perceive Caleb Williams to be as a player. What are elements of this offense that you kind of recognize from the Lions, and what elements are kind of different, and how much can we say from what we've seen that we even know what this offense is going to look like?
Yeah, I think that last point is probably the most poignant, that we, preseason and even training camp practices haven't given us the whole shebang, but yet we know it's going to have fundamental tenets that are similar to the Lions offense. Like there's just things that Ben Johnson wants to accomplish that are fairly universal, right? Like ideally they'd like to run the ball as much as possible and not have to throw it if they don't need to. And, they would like to get the ball in the hands of playmakers, right? So it's not necessarily like the thing we're going to see the Bears do is some totally unique, has no similarities to Detroit at all. It's more just like taking those sort of philosophical preferences and then applying it to the skill sets that Chicago has, that they have a quarterback who maybe can improvise and break from structure a little bit more than Jared Goff could. Or, they have playmakers on the receiver that have slightly different skill sets. They don't have quite a Jameson Williams deep threat in the same way, but they've got pass catchers who can make plays after the catch, in terms of DJ Moore having some Amon-Ra-like traits and Luther Burden having some Amon-Ra-like traits, but neither one being exactly quite the same player there. So it's just going to be kind of like a Bears flavor on this idea of like, make the quarterback's job easy, not because we don't trust him, but because we don't need to make it any more difficult than it should be. And then when it does get difficult, that's when we can turn and trust him to be the playmaker that we've seen him be at college and as a rookie.
So when I think of the concept of a Bears flavored version of an offense, I think about the time Dave Matthews Band drove over a bridge
in Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you got to empty the latrine. And the Bears feel like they drove over that bridge this offseason by letting Matt Eberflus move on. And
hey, look at that. You're just bringing it back around. What a professional.
Yeah. Well, the idea is that now the Dave Matthews Band tour bus that is the current Chicago Bears has bathrooms that are ready to be refilled, and
we've got all new crap to put in there.
Well, yeah, we're just hoping there's not much crap to add back to it.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's start with Caleb Williams. How has Caleb Williams progressed? Like, has it been, growth? Has it been stable? Are we seeing any differences? And obviously, like preseason camp, whatever, right? Like, we don't have a ton of information, but given the information that we do have, are we seeing elements of his game change? Are they changes to his weaknesses, changes to his strengths, some secret third thing? I don't know.
Yeah, there will be changes. I don't know that we've had enough of a sample size to like definitively say, this is what's improved or this is what hasn't improved. But like, there's a big ongoing storyline narrative throughout training camp that, this Bears offense was struggling and Caleb Williams was struggling, and that, there were interceptions and passes were hitting the ground. And that's
good.
That's been very, I don't want to say like intentional, like they're not intentionally having him be bad, but like the whole point for Ben Johnson and the staff was to push these guys really hard and to make things really difficult for them. And so like they, in some sense, want them to be making mistakes as part of that growth and learning process. And I think the idea from Ben Johnson is like, if they were having these really flawless training camp practices, then that would mean we're not pushing them hard enough and we're not putting enough on their plate, so that once they finished installs, which was like, the first 2 or 3 weeks of training camp practice, we stopped hearing that narrative of like, oh, these bad practices, because now they started going through plays the second and third time through and eliminating the stuff that didn't work very well and focusing on the stuff that did work well. And all of a sudden they've been able to build a lot more momentum, and we see them come out against the Bills and have a really strong performance. And I know it was a little bit more concerning against the Chiefs the second time around, but it was a very different offensive approach in that game, and a very small sample size that I'm not sure either one is definitive of like exactly what we're going to see this season. But I think somewhere in the middle between this looks like a well-oiled machine and same old Caleb is going to be where the truth lies, at least for week 1 against the Vikings.
When you say the offenses look different between those two games, like how did that materialize for you?
Yeah, so against Buffalo in the second preseason game, which was the first game that Caleb played in, the Bears came out passing on like 7 of their first 8 plays, and it was all very intentionally designed. I don't want to say quick, not quick rhythm, but in rhythm passing, right? It was like 5-step drop, hitch, balls out, thrown with anticipation. Like there was very clearly like, let's dial some things up for Caleb to get in a rhythm and get going early, and not really worry about the running game so much, and not really worry about how we're sort of approaching it from a broader game plan perspective. It's just like, let's unleash this a little bit and show ourselves that like this is how the offense is supposed to work. And it really looked like, everything was the way it was supposed to look. I mean, they got the ball to like 5 or 6 different receivers, got everybody involved, ended in a nice touchdown drive, and it was like, boom, there's like your proof of concept. But then against the Chiefs in their second game for the starters, but really the third overall preseason game, they came out and ran it on like 6 of the first 7 plays. And it was all about, let's run DeAndre Swift. And so the couple of times they threw with Caleb Williams, he hadn't really gotten to rhythm. And then the blitz came and he held on to the ball a little bit too long, and it started to get back to some of the stuff that we wanted to see more improvement from, but it didn't feel like Ben Johnson was trying to run an offense that was like, hey, let's score as many points as possible this game. It's like, no, I want to get this running game and this offensive line some work here. So we're going to sprinkle some passes in between, but it's not really the emphasis for us today. We just want to kind of get the ground game going. So none of it felt like a showcase of exactly what this offense was going to be. It was more like, here's what I wanted to accomplish in these games, and regardless of whether it's going to win or lose it for us.
Okay. So the Bears offense is bad. Got it. That's what I learned.
That's the only takeaway you can get there. Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the running game. You mentioned that, like, obviously Ben Johnson focused a lot on the running game in Detroit. And I want to know kind of like how much of that is like, hey, we're like a Dan Campbell team, not a Ben Johnson team. And how much of that is like Ben Johnson is like, no, I love running the ball. I love running the ball so much. How can we like divine which of those two things is kind of maybe closer to the truth? And then secondarily, like the last time Ben Johnson had DeAndre Swift, he got rid of him, right? So like, how happy are we with this situation?
Yeah. So I would say that the DeAndre Swift narrative is something that has been persistent, but not with much evidence since he's come to the Chicago Bears. Yes, he did get rid of them in Detroit, but like from the moment he has gotten here, Ben Johnson has been very complimentary of DeAndre Swift and has endorsed him publicly over and over again. And yet, because he was so disappointing last year for the Bears, I think Bears fans have been looking at every possible draft pick and trade and free agent to upgrade the Bears running back position. And the Bears kind of repeatedly showed us with inaction or drafting a running back in the 7th round that like, no, we're actually pretty happy and satisfied with DeAndre Swift. Like, we're rolling with this. This is our plan. And they're pretty confident that he can get the job done, in large part, I think, because the real fix was the offensive line, right? This was supposed to be a much better group up front with Joe Thuney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson rebuilding the interior. You got Darnell Wright coming back at right tackle, and now Braxton Jones back at left tackle. He's probably the biggest question mark at this point, more so due to health. But I think the idea from Ben Johnson is like, I can scheme this and we can block this well enough that any of these running backs will get the job done. They're not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, but that's okay. We don't need, in year 1 of me trying to execute this offense, we don't need this to be Jahmyr Gibbs just yet. Swift can be 1,000-yard back, and we can run plenty of play action off of that and feel like that group will at least get the job done, if not be more than what they need.
Why did he get rid of DeAndre Swift? I mean, obviously he's not the general manager of the Detroit Lions from several years ago, but like, why did that happen?
I don't have like a definitive answer there. I mean, for me, it's like you kind of get to that decision point where it's like we're coming up towards the end of a rookie contract and you know that a payday is going to be in the near future. And he was always kind of a rotational back there. And so if the right offer's there from Philadelphia, you say, screw it. We want to go and get better. And you have the opportunity to, get David Montgomery on a decent price deal. And then Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft, you trade down and he's still there. So you take him. So I think there was just a feeling of like, well, we kind of saw this through for what it was worth and we can make this work with other running backs and don't need to get caught up in paying him. But I don't know that it was some like, he's bad or not good enough. I mean, his last year in Detroit, he averaged over 5 yards per carry. I just think I don't have like a definitive answer. I just think it's a combination of getting towards the end of a rookie contract and saying, well, let's get some value for him and see if we can upgrade that position.
Rashawn Johnson, not healthy, right? So we're just going to see the 7th rounder.
Almost certainly. He has not practiced. Rashawn Johnson has not practiced in, I don't have an exact date, but feels like close to a month, 2 to 3 weeks at least, but probably close to a month. And he's been like, I don't know if you follow like the Coach Speak Index people on Twitter that track like all the press conference and stuff, but they've noted how like Ben Johnson has not said like 3 words about Rashawn Johnson all offseason. Like he's raved about
Rick. Okay.
He's raved about Kyle Monangai, and somehow Rashawn Johnson has been the forgotten guy in there. And I mean, he was disappointing last season, but I think there's a pretty clear expectation that Monangai, even if they're healthy, Monangai might still be the number 2 running back. And with Rashawn still out, it's definitely going to be him as that next choice. But there's a feeling like, could Rashawn still have like some kind of 3rd down role in the future? He's probably the best pass protector of the 3 and a decent pass catcher. But Monangai for now is a bowling ball, secondary ball carrier behind Swift.
Are they going to elevate a guy? I think the only guy on the practice squad right now, running back, is Britton Brown, right? Are they going to like elevate a guy, or are they just going to roll in with 2?
So the number 3 running back will be DJ Moore. That's the fun wrinkle they're going for.
Wait, not Luther Burden?
No, DJ Moore has been practicing with the running backs. Like not.
Geez.
During individual drills, Eric Bieniemy, Bears running backs coach, is coaching up DJ Moore on taking handoffs on the backfield. Like he's
all right. Not a serious team. You can't tell me this is a serious team.
So I mean, DJ Moore's not going to get 10 carries, but it's something they're. It is something we're absolutely going to see it against the Vikings. He's going to line up at least once in that backfield. I would be stunned if he never got a single snap back there. But Ryan Poles has insisted that he thinks these running backs are going to be healthier and good to go. But as the closer we get to game time, I would expect Rashawn probably doesn't, and they might call up somebody like, Britton Brown from the practice squad. But I think they've got other guys they really want to call up from the practice squad. I think they already have plans for those 2 call up spots. So they might just go 2 running backs plus DJ Moore and say good enough.
Why not? I do want to talk about the receivers in a second, but I totally forgot to address this thing with the quarterbacks real quick, which was there seems to be a underground movement, as it were, that argues that Tyson Bagent is better than Caleb Williams. And I know that that's a rational and reasonable take. I know that that is something that people who are, that have a lot of ball knowledge and are mentally extremely healthy, that's the kind of claim that they would make. Would you care to respond to the allegations that Tyson Bagent is actually a better quarterback than Caleb Williams?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about Tyson Bagent, right? It feels like when you respond.
So diplomatic, dude. This is great.
Well, it comes off as like, no, Tyson Bagent sucks. Like, no, that's not. but like, there is very clearly a difference between the talent of a number 1 overall pick quarterback and the talent of a former undrafted free agent quarterback. And it's one of those, I think, as a fan base where whenever there's anything wrong with a starter, the grass is always greener with the backup. But I mean, Bagent has operated this offense well in the preseason. And this is purely a sample size thing where like we've seen Caleb Williams throw a handful of passes and we've seen Tyson Bagent run the offense for, 3/4 of 3 different preseason games. And of course it's looked good with Tyson Bagent doing it that long because he has a whole game to get in a rhythm and work with the receivers and do all that stuff that Caleb hasn't had the opportunities to do. Like it's like we're struggling to give Bagent credit without taking credit away from Caleb Williams. And I think the accentuation of Caleb's reportedly struggling in training camp practices that maybe isn't that big of a deal, combined with Bajent looking sharp in preseason games, naturally lends itself that way. Plus, Bajent and his dad are very media friendly behind the scenes. And so there's a lot of people who are big fans of Tyson Bajent for more than just on-field reasons.
A conspiracy. I see how it is. Did he have the same troubles that Caleb had at the first 2 weeks of camp while we were figuring out the limits of what we could get away with?
Some. I mean, it's hard to compare them side by side because Caleb.
Okay, I mean that sounds like no. This sounds like no.
So I mean, the same struggles, not necessarily. It's hard. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an apples and oranges thing in the sense that like some of the struggles for the offense was like guys getting lined up correctly and it's like operational stuff, not so much like is Caleb missing open receivers downfield or misreading coverages. And so, was Tyson Bajent maybe a little bit better at getting the backups lined up in their spots? I mean, probably, but does that make him a better quarterback? No.
Right.
I mean, okay. He's a quarterback coach, maybe. Sure.
Right. Let's talk about the receivers. So Luther Burden, it sounds like he's not going to play a significant role early in the season. It sounds like he's like wide receiver 4, maybe. Why is Olamide Zaccheaus ahead of him?
Well, I think a lot of it's veteran versus rookie thing where Zaccheaus just can pick up an offense quicker and knows how to handle himself as an NFL wide receiver. A lot of it is also that Luther Burden in rookie minicamp right after being drafted, suffered some kind of soft tissue-ish injury that I don't remember. And so he missed all of OTAs and mandatory minicamp and, came back for the start of training camp, but even still a little bit slowed up then. So I think just generally being behind because of injury and then also being behind because of being a rookie and just trying to learn and catch up to all this stuff has been some of that. But we have seen Luther Burden in particular take really well to Ben Johnson's coaching. Like one of the knocks on Burden coming out of college was like some effort, motivation stuff, like when the ball is not being thrown his way, doesn't give, like when it's blocking on a screen pass or whatever it is, like maybe he doesn't care that much. But in the preseason, there were a couple plays where they motioned him into an inline tight end position at the snap and had him block, and he moved linebackers. Like this is someone who seems to be buying into the message of this coaching staff and saying, yeah, I'm willing to do the dirty work now. And I think from there, you'll start to see his role grow and accelerate. But I think that took some time to really kind of sink in.
All right, so we got Tyson Bajent diva, we got Luther Burden diva, a diva who's blocking in line like a tight end, classic diva behavior. So what does Zaccheaus offer as I'll ask about the real receivers in a second, but what does Zaccheaus offer as a receiver? Like we see him on the field, like what is like, I remember seeing him at Atlanta, which is actually, I thought he did pretty well there. Saw him at Washington. Like, what does he do?
Yeah, he feels to me like kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type of thing, where it's like he's a pretty good route runner. That's probably his best trait. But like he's not fast, but he's not slow. He's not big, but he's not small. He can play inside. He can play out. Like he's kind of just a little bit of
just a guy,
all reliable kind of that kind of like security blanket type player for Caleb Williams that they very quickly built a rapport, and he's probably like the least exciting of the receivers, but maybe I don't want to say the most trustworthy, but just sort of it's kind of that like I said, that old reliable, whereas like DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Luther Burden, like they can be big time playmakers, but not quite the same. I guess they've got more distinct roles, I guess.
Okay. Well, let's talk about those roles then. Let's talk first about DJ Moore, who I feel like ever since he was traded has produced kind of like disappointingly, but has he been a disappointing player like on film, right? Like it's not necessarily his fault that like as a rookie, Caleb Williams couldn't necessarily connect well with him or whoever was before Caleb Williams. What was his name? Justin Fields, right?
Yeah, whoever that was.
Yeah, some guy.
Well, because but to your point, like, this is the first time in DJ Moore's career he will have the same quarterback 2 seasons in a row. So he's now got the opportunity.
Wait. When it wasn't Justin Fields, was it Case Keenum, Andy Dalton? What are we talking about?
Like 2 seasons in a row where the same starting quarterback year 1 to year 2.
Oh yeah, because Moore hasn't been there for very long. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Fields and 1 year of Caleb, so now he's got 2 years.
Yeah. I was like, but Fields has been the quarter. Like we just wasn't processing this. Got it. Yeah. No, fair enough.
There's the idea then that like he can now develop more of that connection, more of that rapport, more of that timing, and not have miscommunications and just missed opportunities out there. Plus a coach that you feel like can utilize DJ Moore's skill set, as a running back in the backfield and as a playmaker after the catch. And like they're no longer trying to make him the X receiver number one on the outside. He gets to kind of be a little bit more of a gadget player that goes all over the place.
Okay. And I mean, like that's kind of how a lot of people envisioned him being used at Carolina. It didn't feel like he was necessarily used like that all that often. Do we really think he's at how old is he? He's 28?
28, yeah.
God, he was a young prospect. Okay, never mind. I was going to be like, how much can we trust a 30-year-old to start picking up running? That's fine. No worries. He never struck me as a particularly nuanced route runner. Super good athlete. Does get separation kind of despite that. This does feel like an offense that does want a little bit of precision from its route runners. Is that, I mean, it sounds like they love him anyway, but does that seem like an area where maybe we won't be able to maximize DJ Moore?
I don't see that as a concern for him because I don't think he's an elite or special route runner. I don't think it's like a weakness of his either. Right? I think he's just kind of middle of the pack in that regard. And I think the feeling is like the precision is more, I mean, every offensive coordinator wants precise routes, but like the precision in Ben Johnson's offense is more about the timing than like the nuance of the cuts of the route.
Yeah. You got to be
where the quarterback expects you at a certain time, but that doesn't mean you have to make 4 cuts in order to get there. It's just sometimes it's going to be a crossing route.
Okay, hey, you know me. I don't think that a good route runner is like this Hunter Renfro. I'm going to make 6 cuts to get. Come on, man.
For the. I know you're a genius of all kinds. Your idiot listeners, those are the ones I got to. No, but so like I'm putting DJ Moore on shallow crosses. He can run a deep in route. Like you don't need to be a precise route runner to run 12 yards and then cut in. Like it helps, but like the offense isn't going to fall apart if he's a little bit sloppy on that cut because he has the acceleration and the speed, and that in theory the layering of the other routes should create the space so that he's where he needs to be and has room to run in front of him. Like the route concepts are supposed to sort of make up for whatever lack of technical proficiency you might have, and then your ability after the catch is what they're really counting on.
Okay, let's talk about Rome Odunze, who unfortunately I can't even pretend is a diva. Like his whole deal coming out was that he had this phenomenal attitude.
Nice.
So so Rome Odunze, great locker room guy, good, not amazing athlete, good athlete, right? Like 4'5" guy, pretty big.
Yeah.
What's his deal? How's he? I read I Googled just before the section. Rome Odunze has looked, quote, unguardable in camp. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean he's the precise route runner with definitely good enough to speed to maximize that great route running. I mean,
I don't want to when I said I'm comparing him to Malik Neighbors, who's an insane athlete, right?
Sure.
He's an above average athlete. I don't want to undercut it too much. Yeah.
I think the only lingering question or downside to Rome Odunze that we still need to see is physically he's a little bit frail and can get pushed off of routes by more physical corners that get up and jam him. And we need to see more growth in that regard. But he's really going to be the prototypical X number 1 wide receiver on the outside in this offense. I still think DJ Moore leads in targets, catches, and yards. But when you talk about who looks like the number 1 wide receiver visually and just sort of when you watch the film, he's lined up there and is still going to get a heavy dose of targets and catches and yards. But I think the primary plan is get DJ Moore the ball in space and let him work after the catch. And then if he's not open, Rome Odunze will have created separation by now on his route, and he's the next place to look because he's just going to be open all the time. And you hope that he can give you a little bit more of a vertical option there because you don't want to have to make DJ Moore as vertical of a receiver as he has been in the past because he can do it. It's just maybe not his perfect skill set.
Sure. Should I think about Jedi Walker or Devin Duvernay? I mean, Jedi Walker had like an amazing, like he was a fun, undrafted, everyone loved him. But like I don't got to think about them though, right?
No, I mean, Ben Johnson's going to get him involved here and there, but no, I mean, it should be, we talked about the 4 receivers and then, we'll get to the 2 tight ends and the running backs. And that's pretty much what the passing offense will be.
Sure. Let's talk about the tight ends then. Okay. So they got the wrong one, right? Why did they grab the wrong tight end and not the correct tight end? What's going on there?
Yeah, crazy how that works. So I think from their perspective, one, Ben Johnson sees Colston Loveland in the mold of Sam Laporta a lot more than Tyler Warren was. They liked, especially Colston Loveland's blocking a bit more, and you're not drafting a tight end number 10.
Have we seen Sam Laporta throw a pass? I'm curious about this one.
That's a good question. I don't know that we have, but
yeah, because if he could throw the ball, then you got to get Tyler Warren, right? Like that's the.
Well, I'm looking through his Pro Football Reference sheet, and I'm not seeing a pass attempt in there. So
okay, yeah, so yeah, he doesn't want tight ends throwing the ball. Weird. Okay,
but so they see, I think they looked at it and said, like, listen, they think Loveland's got a little bit more of a well-rounded skill set, and if they're similar enough receivers, and he's the better, more physical blocker, then we're going to take him and roll with it. And I certainly understand.
But do you think they are similar enough receivers? I don't. That's like because like everybody, I not obviously not everybody, but I have over 100 big boards, right? Like almost everybody had Tyler Warren ahead of Colston Loveland, and I would imagine a lot of them understood that Loveland was a better blocker, and so just by inferencing that out, I think most people would very easily conclude that they were not similar receivers. So like. Why would they come to that type of conclusion?
So I guess a couple thoughts on that side. One, I think from Ben Johnson's perspective, it's not even necessarily just the fact that Loveland is the better blocker, but that in the context of this offense, he really wants the threat of the tight end as a blocker to be a real sell for the play action, so that when Tyler Warren is in the game, it's a little bit more like if Jimmy Graham's out there, it's like, well, we don't really have to, like if they're going to run the ball, we don't really have to worry about his side of the line because he's just not that great of a, like Warren is not a good blocker. And again, that's not the whole decision-making point here, but it is a bigger factor for Ben Johnson than it might be for other coaches. But then also Colston Loveland is younger, and I think there's a feeling like he can still be growing into his body a little bit more and be even bigger, faster, stronger. And that Colston Loveland, wasn't playing in as prolific of a passing offense. His role in that offense wasn't the same. We've seen, Jim Harbaugh admit before he left, but with JJ McCarthy, hiding the passing game a little bit more and being more of a run first offense there that maybe didn't put Loveland in as many positions to shine the way that Tyler Warren was really like a first passing option over and over again for Penn State over there. So I think there's some opportunity aspects of this that change the evaluation. And I'll note that it's been reported by a few different places that the Los Angeles Rams were trying to trade into the top 10 to draft Colston Loveland and were unsuccessful in doing so.
Sure, bud. Sorry. I do find it kind of interesting because like, this is like a relative to the other draft classes, just like broadly. This, I think, is one of the younger ones, especially considering that they drafted 2 offensive linemen who are typically older, right? So like the only old guy is the Maryland linebacker who, I mean, he's a super athlete. So there's like other reasons that you grab him. But like it's a pretty young draft class, right? Luther Burden's kind of young. Colston Loveland's young. Shamar Turner's young. Ozzie Trapillo's an offensive lineman, so he gets to be a little bit older, right? Like is that a trend?
And I don't think of Shamar Turner as being extra young. He's 22.
Well, he's not old. I mean, okay, COVID classes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this as a specifically like an intentional trend along this class. Like, I think from Ryan Poles' perspective, like they got to the 10th overall pick and it was like best player available is going to be one of these 2 tight ends. So we like Loveland, we're taking him. And they get to their second round pick. They missed out on Travion Henderson, who they actually really wanted. So it's like best player available, this first round caliber wide receiver, Luther Burden, we'll take him. All right. And then from there, they're like, shoot, we got to get a tackle and we got to get a defensive lineman. So let's trade down and see if we can grab a couple of guys we like in Turner and Trapillo. And then from there,
the Ryan Poles magic at it again.
Well, yeah.
Look, I mean, you're on a Vikings podcast. Kwesi has historically not been the most wonderful drafting GM either. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, especially that's why he traded up from the third round to get 3 second round picks, because all of his third round picks have been abysmal. So he just said, "Screw it, I'm not."
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
He's been
not
great
dealing with this anymore.
But they just cut third round pick Zach Pickens. You got Velus Jones. There's a couple others I'm struggling to think of off the top of my head, but it is
Velus Jones from the analytics cylinder. Love him.
That's right. He's got an A score of 100 or whatever. Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of like draft prospect ages, good Lord.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
The one area that kind of ties those into this current draft class is like the way that they've been approaching it generally is like once they get past the second round, I think his approach is
just guys.
Like, is what? Sorry.
It's just guys. Like
no, it's our assistants have some favorites in this draft class. So let's get them the guys they like. So like Dennis Allen loved Ruben Hippolyte in the 4th round. So they went and got him. And their DB's coach, Al Harris, former Green Bay Packers cornerback, he loved Zay Frazier, the corner from, I'm struggling to remember what school he even went to. UTSA? Yeah, UTSA. Yeah. So they got him his guy. Like the O-line coach loved their 6th round pick, Luke Newman. Like they just kind of like, all right, we're going to get you your guys. And I wonder, if in previous drafts as well, right? It's like, wide receivers coach loved Velus Jones, or Luke Getsy loved, I would imagine defensive line coach loves Zach Pickens. And so they go get guys that are like, all right, you guys are the coaching staff. We're going to get you the guys you want. And maybe that's not always the best idea, especially if the previous coaching staff wasn't able to really develop those players very well.
Yeah. All right. Cole Kmet is still going to play a pretty significant role though, right?
Yes. I think, certainly from like a fantasy football perspective, I wouldn't trust either of these tight ends because I think, neither one is going to hit 800 yards, but neither one's going to hit 1,000 yards. Neither one's going to get below 400 yards though. Like they're both going to play a lot, and it's really going to feel kind of like splitting tight end one, and there's not really a true starter versus a true backup because they're both going to kind of have different roles and overlap here and there. And I think it's going to kind of be a constant juggling back and forth of like, who's really kind of the primary tight end? It kind of depends on the week and the game plan.
All right. Let's talk about the offensive line. Primarily the question about whether or not Braxton Jones has the ability to perform against somebody like Jonathan Grenard, which historically has not been the case, might hinge on this injury question. Can you fill us in?
Yeah. So late last season, Braxton Jones suffered some kind of ankle injury. I don't know if it was a break or whatever it was that he carted off and ended his season. It was like week 15 or 16, pretty late in the year. So he had surgery on that and missed all of OTA's mandatory minicamp, et cetera. But all along the plan was that he should be good to go for the start of training camp. He was, I would say, barely good to go for the start of training camp. Like he practiced pretty much right away, but there was a really long kind of ramp up period where he wasn't full go for the first couple of weeks. And the rest of training camp and the preseason has been a whole process of just him trying to get healthier and trying to get more physically comfortable. Like he played in the preseason games. Like he's been practicing. He hasn't had to miss practice with ankle soreness or whatever. It's purely just like a stiffness and he just looks different on tape. When you watch him in the preseason games, he doesn't look comfortable. He's not moving naturally and freely like someone who you would think of as 100% healthy. But they keep saying every week he's been getting a little bit closer to 100%. And the last, week and a half, the best he's looked as he get closer and closer to week one as he gets just a little bit
shape
more
of his life. Yeah.
Well, not even best shape of his life. It's just he's getting more strength and stability and comfort with the ankle that he can trust it more and just kind of play naturally and more loose without, thinking about re-injuring it. And so the idea is that he's going to keep getting a little bit better as we get closer and closer to week one. And that is what allowed him to win the quote unquote offensive tackle competition that I'm not sure how much of a true competition it was.
I heard it was a 4-person competition.
It was really 3, and then they swapped out the third guy for a different third guy. So, 4 players over the course of time, but all it was hey, we need a plan here in case Braxton Jones never gets better. If this doesn't improve, we got to figure out who else is going to be our plan B here. And none of the other options really worked out. So they said, screw it. We're going to roll with, 80% of Braxton Jones is probably still better than 100% of a rookie or a couple of second-year guys who've never played.
80% of Braxton Jones sounds kind of like a nightmare, if I'm being honest.
If that's your worst problem up front, I think the Bears are in a pretty good spot.
Historically speaking, they're in a phenomenal spot if that's their worst problem.
I'm worried that Jonah Jackson will become that worst problem, but for now we can have the illusion that he's good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about somebody who tricked me, Darnell Wright, whose rookie year was, I would argue, not fantastic. And then last year, I don't know, he seemed pretty good to me. Is he good? Are we comfortable with the Bears right tackle for like the first time in a long time?
Yeah, Darnell Wright is good. And I think for Bears fans, there's this like almost dissatisfaction that he still needs to be even better. Like, because he was a top 10 pick, he was 10th overall pick. It's like, all right, like year 3, we want to see this guy be, if not a literal Pro Bowler, like closer to that caliber of player. Like, I think right now he's a average to above average starting right tackle. Like, that's very, like, he checks the boxes. Like, yeah, don't got to worry about Darnell Wright. But given, especially because they chose to pass on Jalen Carter and then took Darnell Wright, there's an expectation of, like, all right, you better be really something special at right tackle. And I don't think he was particularly well coached the last couple of seasons. And so I think there's a hope or an expectation that the new offensive line coach can get more out of him. And long term, I would predict Darnell Wright will be the Bears' week 1 starting left tackle in 2026, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
So you mentioned Jonah Jackson, the concern that he like might not be good, and he's playing right guard, right?
Correct.
Okay, so he has done that like 3 times in the NFL. By 3 times, I mean 3 games, not 3 seasons. How happy are we with this?
That's one of these like bubbling under the surface things that has not come up or been an issue at all throughout this process that I think is an easy trap for the Chicago Bears to fall in, where like everyone kind of just assumes, well, he's back with Ben Johnson and he's healthy, so you're going to get the Pro Bowl guy from 2022, right? Like, of course, right? No questions, nothing to worry about there. And my entire lifetime of following the Chicago Bears suggests that be more concerned there. Yeah, I'm less concerned about, he's playing right guard now, because he's been there throughout the entirety of the offseason. And I think a lot of the problems with the Rams last year was that like they had him at guard initially, then moved him to center towards the end of like training camp. And then after like a game or 2 at center, they tried to kick him back to guard. I think they moved him to right guard at that point, and he hadn't really practiced it. So there was just a lot of that, like moving him around and not putting him in any one spot, and maybe just not being a very good fit all around there. And then he gets hurt on top of that. And so I'm willing to sort of overlook or write off or ignore last year with the Rams, but I'm less willing to overlook the previous 2 years with the Lions, where he missed 6 or 7 games each year and wasn't nearly as good as he had been the year prior. So like, my question with Jonah is mostly an injury thing, but also like, I think if he's healthy, he's not going to be great, but you'll get by with him. And then if he's hurt, then you're in some real trouble there.
And then with Drew Dahlman and Joe Thuney, my question is it possible to overpay for good offensive linemen?
That is a really good question. I mean, I think generally the answer is yes. I think if you're going to overpay, center is a good place to do it because they're just generally cheaper than guards.
Yeah.
They spent $14 million a year on Drew Dahlman when they really wanted to spend 20 plus on Trey Smith of the Chiefs, but couldn't get him. But so the Chiefs kind of saved them from themselves there, and they called the Chiefs about trying to trade for Trey Smith, and like, not Trey Smith, but if you want Joe Thuney. And Ryan Poles is like, wait, really? Sure.
Hold on. Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. No take backsies.
He's like, that's not, he literally, like, he made it sound like that's not who they had called about. Like, he literally said, like, he didn't say it in exact words, but the impression was like, we were calling about Trey Smith and they offered us Joe Thuney instead. So we took that, and it's just wild how that works out. But
it's crazy that he said that though. Like, we never get that from GMs.
Yeah, it was, he's got that relationship with the Chiefs having been there that I think he's a little bit more forthcoming with them. But like, for me, when we're talking about overpaying offensive linemen, my concern is that they gave Jonah Jackson 3 years and $54 million more than the contract they gave.
Sure. Yeah. That's
fair. Or Joe Thuney. Like, Jackson's the one who's both overpaid and the least reliable of the 3. The other 2, they're fine. The Bears, the investment in them will be well worth it, even if they're not elite.
Well, Jonah's coming off an injury, and Drew Dahlman's coming off an injury, isn't he?
Dahlman has had ankle issues the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's definitely a concern for me, but they haven't been like major season ending as far as I know. They've been a little bit more minor. Like, I talked to some Falcons guys about that, and it sounds like it's one of those like smaller lingering questions, but not like this is like, that's not why they didn't re-sign him exactly. You know, it was just more of a pricing thing and the turnover on the roster, and they had some other younger guys, but it was more of a minor factor than like a major deal.
Okay. Famously healthy Bears offensive line, so I don't got to worry there.
Yeah, never have issues with that, so it should be good.
All right, so that whole setup against the Vikings defense, right? Like, obviously, the Vikings have good individual players, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, hopefully Dallas Turner, Blake Cashman, whatever, right? And they just added Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. Cool. I'm not going to talk about the corners. I don't want to think about that. How do we think that they match up to the way that Brian Flores kind of deploys a lot of these pass rushers?
Yeah, I'll say Ben Johnson in Detroit. And not that we're going to apply everything he did in Detroit exactly the same in Chicago, but
he did okay with it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously he was good against the Vikings, but like more generally over the course of the season, he gave his offensive tackles a lot more help, especially the left tackle, despite it being, you know, like Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. Like then even the Bears did. The Bears put their tackles on an island a lot in recent years. And so I think there's an expectation that like obviously the Braxton Jones, Jonathan Grenard matchup scares the hell out of you, but that there will be more support for those positions. And I think more broadly, like I think the Bears are probably a little outmatched in that matchup, but if Brian Flores is going to be blitzing you a lot anyway, then it's almost like, who cares how well you're going to be able to block them? Let's just get rid of the ball before we need to block them for very long anyway. So whether your offensive line is great or not, like we're still going to try and have the ball out in 2.5 seconds. So not going to have to worry too much all the time about how well Braxton Jones is going to hold up against Grenard, because the ball will be out before, as long as you just get in his way, the ball can hopefully in theory be out before any problems would occur.
How confident are you the ball is going to be out like in the right amount of time?
That's going to be the real measurement of Ben Johnson. But I do think with Caleb, there's been a delineation in when holding onto the ball too long versus a regular pass rush versus the blitz coming. I think he's someone who, when there's a 4-man rush, he's like, oh, I can outrun these guys. Like I got 5, like I can maneuver this, I can escape this and keep this play going. But I think he's generally been smarter about seeing, oh, this is an overload blitz. I've got man coverage. I just got to get rid of this. Like I know I can't fully outrun this blitz. Like with the exception of, I know there have been times when he's got a free running DB and he doesn't have much room to go, and then he'll try and escape that. But it's not necessarily because he's holding onto the ball too long. It's because this pass rusher is free and he's getting here in under 3 seconds. So I don't have much choice. And so I'm going to just try and escape this. But generally speaking, I think he's pretty good at the, oh crap, here's all the blitz, let me get rid of it, and not hold on to the ball too long in those situations where the defense demands that you have to get rid of it. But when he thinks, oh, I could extend this, that's when the holding on to the ball actually starts.
All right, let's talk about the other side of the ball. How much did they pay Odeyingbo, by the way? I'm so curious about this. I forget.
Yeah, Dayo Dengbo is top 25 paid edge rusher and per year average. He's getting, where is it here? $16 million a year. So he got 3 years, 48.
Okay, I was going to make fun of it. That's not awful, actually.
It feels like it. It really does. It feels worse than the number, because they lowered his cap. His cap hit this year is only $8 million, but it gets up to 20 the next 2 years. And like, I don't like the idea.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about this. Why? What?
I mean, I don't know. This was probably the most confounding of the offseason moves for me, that it was such a high priority to get a pass rusher. And I mean, part of it is that they only guaranteed, well, I mean, it's $32 million is still a decent percentage of the contract, I guess, guaranteed. But like, they see him as a young ascending player. That essentially, the short answer is they're paying Dayo Dengbo for what he does in the future, not what he's done in the past. And they're banking on them being able to develop him and grow him into more, because he's young, he's long, he's in the Dennis Allen mold of oversized defensive ends with some high athletic upside. But it's a big risk and a big bank to try and make here, and I'm not confident it was the right move.
So I can't actually come up with a question here. I don't like. What is the vision for? How do you think he performed last year?
Dayo Dengbo?
Yeah, for the Colts.
I mean, I think there were flashes, but he didn't look to me like, wow, this is a top of the market, not top of the market, but this is a higher end free agent pass rusher that we got to go out and make a priority to bring in. Like, it felt a little bit more like, we got to get somebody. And so this is somebody that we're going to trust in Dennis Allen to identify the talent. And, you know, if our scouts can kind of match up some positive to like, then we're going to put it in his hands. And I do think among Chicago Bears fans, there's a little bit of an overrating of Dennis Allen. Like, he's always had good defenses in New Orleans, but like, if they're giving him a lot of say and leeway when they didn't always make the best decisions personnel wise in New Orleans. And I think more generally for Dennis Allen, it's that he puts a lot of emphasis on interior pressure and collapsing the pocket at the top. And so if he feels like he can get some long defensive ends that can hold up against the run and give you some pass rush, that he can kind of make the rest work. But again, it's putting a lot on Dennis Allen's shoulders that everyone's kind of counting on. You got to be the guy.
Is this the year Montez Sweat breaks out? What is he, like 27, 28 now?
Yeah, 28, I think. I mean,
this year he breaks out.
I mean, in a lot of ways, the year he was traded to the Bears was that breakout season. He had 12 and a half sacks.
His sack numbers were high, but I feel like his pressure numbers were like the same as the prior year.
Yeah, and that's been consistently over the course of his career. They've like steadily increased. The pressure percentage increased like 1% a year. Like, he's gone from like 8 to 9 to 10 and 11, like over the last 4 years. So it's like,
when he's 33, he's going to be unstoppable.
Just think when he's 50. I mean, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, I do think we should see an improved Montez Sweat from a scheme standpoint. Now, is that going to be 12 and a half sacks or what? I mean, what number you want to put on that is sacks are not always, a good measurement of pass rush. But I think so often in the Matt Eberflus defense, it was like, we're straight rushing 4. Maybe we'll stunt him every once in a while, but Montez Sweat was getting, a decent amount of double teams. And I think with Dennis Allen, we're going to see a lot more variety up front. And the idea is that, if you're moving guys around a little bit and more sim pressures and bringing pass rushers from different places, that maybe Montez Sweat should be able to get more favorable matchups. Or if he's not getting more favorable matchups than everybody else is, and that even if Sweat doesn't have a big year, that he can be enough of a decoy that they'll get enough pass rush elsewhere to collectively have a good enough rush, even if the plan isn't let's make Sweat the superstar.
All right, so that's a good question to ask, like just the way to develop one-on-ones. So last year the Bears were very slightly below average in blitz rate at 23.5%. The league, and this is from Pro Football Reference, who uses Sports Radar, who they have different blitz numbers than like PFF and stuff like that. So just like all of that is different, but the blitz rates on this platform move from 14% to 40%, which is where the Vikings are essentially, or they were last year, with 23.5 kind of that median area. And the Vikings are like 5% above the next rate. So like, that's what they are. What kind of blitz rate within this range would you expect Dennis Allen to produce?
That's going to be one of the biggest unknown questions here, because there's so much concern about the defensive line and the lack of pass rush there, that I don't think Dennis Allen wants to blitz aggressively and doesn't want to have to rely on that. But I think he's going to be forced to because of some of these deficiencies. And so I'm expecting it to be, the boring answer is like in between, right? Like definitely a significant step up from what they did last year under Matt Eberflus, but not like over the top 5 most aggressive blitzing defense in football. Like in some ways, he's going to want to just rush 4 and sit back in man coverage and trust that their guys can hold up on the back end and give the pass rushers time to get after the quarterback, and that the pass rushers can get after the quarterback quickly enough that the man coverage doesn't have to hold up for 5-6 seconds. And it's a concern because both the pass rush is a concern right now and the injuries in the secondary make that side a concern. And it feels like each one is relying on the other to be better than they are.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
There's ways to make it work in New Orleans. Like even when they don't have great talent, and they've still been pretty consistently top 15, top 10 defenses where like, I don't think it's going to be a big weakness for the Bears, but it's a question of like, are they a strength or are they just fine?
Yeah, that's fair. Anything about the defensive tackles worth noting? Gervon Dexter suddenly becoming good. Grady Jarrett suddenly becoming young. Is there a thing I should worry about there?
I mean, so Grady Jarrett did not play a single snap of preseason football, and we didn't hear a lot about him throughout training camp. So he's someone who we're interested. I mean, I'm struggling with the words here. Like, I think there's an expectation that he's going to be back to being a great Grady Jarrett, and that I think Bears fans are hoping to be pleasantly surprised by. And I find when they signed him, I have some doubts about how good he's going to be, but he might just be able to kind of like veteran savvy his way to a good season where he's not as fast as he used to be or as explosive as he used to be, but he's just smart and knows his way around, tendencies for opposing offensive linemen. So like, I think they're counting on him being a big factor. And I think his performance might be even more important than Dio Odengbo in terms of what Dennis Allen needs from his group up front. But they feel really good about their 4 deep at defensive tackle and can rotate all those guys. Shamar Turner has been hurt through most of training camp and is going to probably be inactive on game day and not play much at all this season just because he's so far behind and they like the guys they have.
All right, so at linebacker behind them, Tremaine Edmonds, obviously, you mentioned that TJ Edwards, before the show, you mentioned that TJ Edwards might be hurt, ? And that will create an interesting scenario where they might have to pick between Noah Sewell and Ruben Hippolyte.
Correct. Edwards missed practice the last couple of days, but as we're recording this, we don't have the first formal injury report just yet, but I suspect at best he'll be limited, if not out, missing practice now. And that's definitely going to put his week 1 status in doubt. I can't remember for the life of me what the injury was. It was something he suffered at practice, after the preseason was done. I think it was even after 53-man roster cut down day. So it's just within the last couple of weeks, but it wasn't something that, landed him on IR or anything. So I don't think we can rule him out for week 1 at this point, but the more time he misses, obviously, the more of a question that becomes. And then the question is, yes, do they go to 4th-round rookie Ruben Hippolyte or former 5th-round pick Noah Sewell, younger brother of Penei Sewell, who is kind of, I don't know if you remember the former Bears linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski, who started for them a couple seasons.
Yeah. Well, he also had a stint with the Bengals.
Yes. Like, Sewell is the next in line from like the Pokemon evolution of like Kwiatkowski to Jack Sanborn to now Noah Sewell. It's like, who's the next slow, instinct run stopping linebacker that doesn't belong anywhere near the field on 3rd down, but they might have to put him out there if TJ Edwards isn't good to go. So we'll see. I think that could be a pretty significant burner here where like Kevin O'Connell, if Noah Sewell's out there, Kevin O'Connell's going to circle him and TJ Hawkinson's going to have, another 100-yard game.
None of them will be as good as Ray Maualuga.
Great name.
Yeah. Okay, so Ruben Hippolyte. Okay, so before the show, I was like, hey, this is crazy. Ruben Hippolyte's a crazy athlete. Noah Sewell is the opposite of that. Noah Sewell knows what he's looking at. Ruben Hippolyte is like fairly familiar with the concept of football is maybe the best way I can put it. How do you make that decision about who goes in?
I think it's purely a question of how much has Ruben Hippolyte learned in the last 3 weeks? Has he gotten a consistent enough understanding of his keys on defense to say he's the guy? Because like as soon as the brain catches up with the body, he's the better player. But you'd take a more instinctual, slower guy than right away who knows you can. Like Noah Sewell's the devil and Ruben Hippolyte's the devil you don't. Where like with Sewell, what he can and can't do, and you can scheme around that. But with Hippolyte, it's like we know you can do more. So what are we actually gonna get out of you? And we can't. It's more of a.
But he played in college for like 5 years. Like when is he gonna learn how to like read his keys?
I think it's about adjusting to the NFL speed, right? It's just like he's a physical athlete, but like everything moves a lot faster in the pros. And I don't think he was like totally lost in the preseason by any means, but I don't like a guy who has any of those question marks against the Kevin O'Connell offense. So it's tricky. I don't know how, honestly, we could see them potentially just go more dime package as well and take a linebacker off the field and just go a lot. Cause we are going to see the Bears do 6 DBs quite a bit. That's a big Dennis Allen thing. And I know we're about to talk about the DBs, but Kyler Gordon is going to surprise some people this year.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about Kyler Gordon. I'm already surprised by the words you just said. How is he going to surprise us this year? What does that mean?
Kyler Gordon is going to do everything. He's the secret weapon X factor.
Is he your Josh Metellus? What's going on?
When I talked to Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, that's exactly what he said. He's like, oh, he's going to be your Josh Metellus. And I was like, yeah, essentially. Like he's he's the slot cornerback, but they're going to rotate him in at safety. They're going to at deep free safety. He'll cover the back end. He'll be a strong safety. He'll be in the box. He'll play some outside cornerback. Like Dennis Allen wants him to be everywhere and to feel like this is a guy who's a really effective blitzing and off the edge and can get home and finish the quarterback. He's really physical against the run and can, get up in there with linemen and tight ends. And then they really trust him in coverage, and he's got some playmaking ability for the ball in the air. So he's kind of the other thing that we haven't seen them unveil yet. But I imagine, especially when they go to that dime package, they'll bring in another slot cornerback, probably Josh Blackwell, then move Gordon a lot. And that may be one of the key ways they try and confuse JJ McCarthy a little bit. Is like, you got to account for where number 6 is on every play, because it's not going to be the same spot twice in a row, and you're not sure exactly what his responsibility is going to be, because it could be all sorts of anywhere.
Has Dennis Allen employed this kind of player before?
I mean, he's had a Tyrann Mathieu. Not that Gordon is the same physical skill set, but I think it's kind of that idea, right? Of like, he often in New Orleans would use 3 safety packages. And so instead of the Bears bringing on a third safety, because they don't have safety depth, they're just going to make Kyler Gordon that third player who kind of becomes the star, that star position that roams around, and they'll bring in extra corners instead.
They got Simone Biles' husband. What do you mean they don't got safety depth?
Have you seen him play football? It's not great.
Right. Does he do that? All I see him is him screwing up interviews. That's all I've ever seen him do.
Not a bad player, but defense, not so much his forte.
Sure. Okay, so we talked about Kyler Gordon a bit, but like the real question mark here is Jalen Johnson. What is going on with him?
Yeah, so before training camp, like he was all good through OTAs and minicamp, but like in the time between that summer break, he suffered. At first, the Bears were being really vague about it in a way that was concerning. They just said some kind of like soft tissue injury and put him on the non-football injury list. And then he was gone for like a month and a half. And like he didn't get activated from NFI until the 53-man roster cut down day. So he did not practice at all throughout the whole process. They still wouldn't say what was going on. Eventually, we just like last week or earlier this week found out it was a groin injury he suffered while working against receiver. Like he was
working against receiver releases. Yeah.
Working receiver releases. They called it a kind of like a freak thing.
Freak accent. You love hearing it.
Yes, right. And so, but like groin injury is one of those things, first of all, like not to be indelicate, but people have already made the joke. So I will mention that this joke is poor taste, but people already made it, that a couple years ago, Jalen Johnson admitted to struggling with sex addiction. And so people are like, great, the sex, which is not fair, but
but also like this could prevent, like, hey, yeah, you can't even do it now. You'll hurt yourself.
It's tough. Maybe it can be a good thing for him along the way. But the point being, like, groin injury is something that doesn't feel like it's just going to be 100% week 1 and now he's good for the rest of the year, right? This feels like something that's going to just be a pain tolerance thing and a lingering thing. And so he's just got back to practice earlier this week for the first time since May. And
are we going to see him? Like that's a pretty short timeline to suddenly return to practice.
Correct. Like to me, this is going to be, if I had to predict, they're going to see how he feels Monday warming up. Like they're not going to know until he gets to Soldier Field and goes through warmups and says, I'm good to go or I'm not good to go. Like we won't know until inactives before. And maybe even to kick off, like he'll give it a try for a drive or two and then maybe come out and rotate him a little bit. Like this is going to be the ultimate coin toss. Like if it was any other player but Jalen Johnson, like a veteran Pro Bowl player like that, I would say there's no shot that he'll be ready to go. But I think he's in that category of players that they trust enough, even on 1 week of practice, to say, 70% of Jalen Johnson is still well worth it. So let's throw him out there. But
see, that I can believe. That's a way better argument than 80% of Braxton Jones in my mind.
Correct. And I think Braxton Jones is probably more like 90 plus at this point. Sure, but yes, sure. I agree. But the impression I've gotten all along is that if I had to, gun to my head, is Jalen Johnson going to play? I would lean no. I think they've kind of made it sound like we don't want to rush him back if it would risk anything bigger. And so if one more week would really make a big difference, we're okay with sitting him down, but I'm not as okay with plan B. So it's
sure. Who is plan B?
Nashawn Wright. Ever heard of him?
Yeah, he's a former Viking. They cut him.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. Traded for that safety, Andrew Booth, right? Was that the trade?
Yeah. They traded Andrew Booth for picks and Nashawn Wright, and they were like, that's not important. They like waived him, I think, the day they traded for him.
Yeah. So the Nashawn Wright story here is that, he was a third round pick by Dallas when Bears defensive backs coach Al Harris was the DB coach there. And so they signed Nashawn Wright to a 1-year, basically vet minimum deal this offseason as some depth. And then Jalen Johnson's hurt and Nashawn Wright looked pretty good, honestly, like at OTAs. And like he was one of the early like standout surprises, like, oh, this guy that really no one had paid any attention to when the Bears signed him. We kind of assumed camp body kind of thing. All of a sudden he was kind of emerging and looking good. But then we got into actual preseason games and it's like, oh, wait, yeah, no, this guy's not. He's bad.
Oh, no.
It was like, well, he's a long physical press man corner, and he was kind of out of wasn't a great scheme fit in Dallas because they put him in more zone situations. So this should be a better fit in Chicago. And it's like, no, there's some real issues there that are beyond just zone coverage. Like even in man, he's getting burned sometimes. Like so I'm nervous about him being lined up against Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell being able to scheme up, let's find the weakness in the secondary and go attack him, especially when like we thought that was just going to be Tyreek Stevenson, but now we've stepped even lower there.
Yeah, we have regressed even further somehow. Tyreek Stevenson, how is he still on the team? That's crazy to me.
The Bears were very cool about just saying, hey, clean slate. Like we're going to, whatever happened last year with the Hail Mary and all that, like they addressed it at the beginning. They said, listen, like that's not going to fly here. So get that anyway. But there seems
but then he got benched and then he got mad that he got benched. Right? Like there was a couple of things that happened.
Yeah, and I think, if the Eberflus regime was still around, he might not be here anymore, but I think there was enough of
no, that's fair, actually. That makes sense.
And it's one of those things where we hear this all the time of like, oh, he's been humbled by this. And like, I think
has he?
There is some evidence of that. I'm not here to say convincingly like, oh yes, he's definitely a changed person, but I think we have seen him talk differently this offseason, like whether it's a true humbling or whether he just learned public relations wise, hey, maybe I should act more humble. We can't actually know the difference on the outside, but there has been a noticeable change in his approach and feeling like it's sunk in a little bit that, hey, I can't do those same things. Now, in the heat of a moment in an NFL game, will that still get the better of him? We shall see. But they approached this whole offseason as an open competition for Tyreek Stevenson's job. It was him versus Minnesota legend Terrell Smith versus Nashawn Wright. But then Jalen Johnson was hurt the whole time. So then it was just like those two guys got to Nashawn Wright and Jalen Johnson.
Phenomenal open competition.
They just got to be the starters the whole time. Like they were both starters. So like you guys both win the competition. And so clearly though Stevenson won. I mean, if Jalen Johnson was healthy, Stevenson is cornerback 2, Wright is a backup, and Terrell Smith is lost for the year on injured reserve. He suffered an injury in a preseason game. Rip. Otherwise, Smith was really in the running there to start. There was a pretty good momentum for him to potentially push that spot, but out of the question now. So it'll be probably, if Jalen Johnson doesn't play, it'll be Wright and Nashawn Wright and Tyreek Stevenson on the outside, Kyler Gordon in the slot. Although I wonder if eventually Dennis Allen will just say, screw this, let's put Kyler Gordon on the outside in base and then move Gordon to the inside in nickel and try and figure it out from there. But one step at a time.
Sure. And then, I don't know, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, are these more than just intriguing names? Like I know that Kevin Byard has an All-Pro in his history, right? Because Deion Sanders was like, who the heck is this guy? And Kevin Byard is like, I had like 8 picks last year. What are you talking about? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Is he still good, or was it just like a 1-year thing? And also, is Jaquan Brisker, like, has he continued to progress?
Yeah, so Kevin Byard is still good, but not great. Like he's the savvy, wily veteran in the back there that like he's not as fast as he used to be, but he's not slow. Like he's what you're getting with him, and it's not perfect, but he gets the job done. And this will probably be his last year in Chicago, but he's a good leader and good tackler and good solid team guy that you like and can rely on back there, but not going to go crazy or have a big breakout performance or game. Brisker is the one that there's still a lot of optimism for progressing. It's just like he missed all of last season, or all but like 3 games last season with that concussion. And it's sort of the Tua situation where you just feel like every hit he's about to take is the one that's going to maybe end his career because of he's had concussions 3 years in a row now and missed progressively more time. But there's a feeling like, much like Tua, like if he can stay healthy, he could be a potential breakout player for this defense, that he is smart and instinctual and a good hitter and pretty good in coverage and a good run defender and can get after the quarterback. Like he's got a lot of the tools to be a really effective, strong safety in this defense. It's just a matter of whether he'll get the opportunity to do them, and can he actually have the chance to show us what kind of growth and progress he's made, because we didn't even really get to see it last year for how little he played.
Rough. I don't know. I don't like, to me, he's the Tua Tagovailoa of the defense, is like a tough sell. So has he so obviously on the first snap, we're going to see kind of like a quote unquote fully healthy Bears team, obviously without necessarily Jalen Johnson and maybe without TJ Edwards, but like that's the idea, right? So for the game, we don't have to worry about Jaquan Brisker's like season long likelihood of staying healthy. We're going to safely assume that he'll play 60-ish snaps, right? What are we getting out of him? Who is he?
It's so hard to say because we just haven't seen him for a while.
That's rough.
Yeah. So, I mean, in theory, you're getting a pretty dynamic athlete with really good instincts that you feel like can cover. You know, he's not an elite cover safety by any means, but like can more than hold his own in the box and back deep, but then also be a physical threat against the run and get after the quarterback and feel like this is, in theory, one of the more talented players on this defense, but we just haven't had enough sample size to see him fully put it all together in a way that is like, that there it is. Like that's exactly what we've been looking for. But we've seen enough flashes of it that it feels like with health and time that he should be able to put it all together. And if he doesn't, there's going to be some real long-term question marks because he's in the last year of his rookie contract. So he's kind of got to show like, hey, I deserve a big deal because not only am I great, but I can also stay healthy.
Justin Jefferson's over under 77.5 yards. You've suggested throughout the course of this preview that this is primarily a man coverage defense. Over?
I would say probably. But I think the over under question mark for me is less about
how many times is JJ McCarthy going to throw the ball and not can they cover? Correct.
That is the bigger question for me. Like it's not. I mean, primarily man is a tricky thing. They're going to run more man coverage than a lot of other teams, but I mean, still, it's probably closer to 50-50 man and zone, which is still a huge rate in the modern NFL. But like, you know, it's not all man coverage all the time. And I do wonder if it's not Jalen Johnson out there, if that pushes Dennis Allen to say, hey, for week one, maybe let's be a little bit more conservative.
All right.
We'll see.
Back when the Bears drafted Torrey Taylor, I made fun of it, right? And then a couple of people are like, hey, you might make fun of Torrey Taylor, but he's like a weapon. And then I think the Bears used that language. They were like, he's a weapon. We're done with that, right? That's stupid.
100%. I was also anti-Torrey Taylor at the time and got a lot of pushback for it, but he's been average to slightly above average punter, which is a nice thing to have, but not right. For a fourth. You know, yeah. You can get that in free agency every year, like regular undrafted free agency, let alone regular NFL free agency. I mean, the real advantage to Torrey Taylor, the best part is that as an international player, he doesn't count as your 90-man roster in the offseason, so you get to keep an extra player. Isn't that so valuable? Wow. 91 in this training camp, buddy. Why don't you get your 90-man roster somewhere else?
Cairo Santos still reasonably solid, right? So,
yeah, he's a team captain, Cairo Santos. Yeah, I mean,
all right.
You know what you're getting with Cairo. Like he's classic, like automatic from under 50 yards, 50 plus, and 50 to 55. He's probably all right, but he doesn't have enough leg to do the big bombs we're seeing everybody else.
The little Cam Little 70 yarder, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that we missed that you feel like we got to cover?
Nothing jumps out at me. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but no, I mean it's all about the coaching scheme battles for me in this game, right? It's all about Ben Johnson's had Brian Flores' number, but now he's doing it with Caleb Williams. So does that change exactly how this works? I mean, yeah, I think I will say this. We always talk about the trenches being important. I'm more worried about the Bears' ability to rush the passer than I am their ability to account for Brian Flores' blitzing. I'm more worried about the Bears' pass rush than pass protection. I trust Ben Johnson to be able to find a way to keep the offense moving against Brian Flores than I do Dennis Allen finding a way to make this pass rush work, because I'm more concerned about the defensive line talent than the Bears' offensive line talent.
That makes sense. That's fair. Vikings, I think, are favored by 1.5 points. It's an away game Monday night. What do we think?
I I still need to see the Bears actually prove that it's all going to work together the way it should. I have enough questions about, the O-line, the D-line, and the health of Jalen Johnson and TJ Edwards to not be confident that they're going to come out and get a big win. So I think, I like that. I like that spread. Like, it's going to be Vikings by 3 or less, and it's probably a pretty close game, and neither team looks super great, but probably a little bit more of an uglier scoring game, like a 20-17 or a 21-20 Vikings victory is kind of where I'm sitting at.
I do like that your concern with the defense was like, I'm worried about the front seven and also the back seven. Like that was really good.
Other than that, we should be good.
All right, man. Where can people find you?
Yeah, of course. I always appreciate you having me on. You can find me on Twitter at CoxSports1. And
Let's go.
You can hear me 5 days a week over on the Locked On Bears podcast.
But by the way, he hasn't been posting on Blue Sky, but I'm still mad that he didn't take the same name for Blue Sky. So
I figured no one's going to claim it on Blue Sky, so I can hold off for now. But now
you could just pounce on it though. Like you could just it's free real estate. Like you should just do it anyway. Whatever.
Well, Blue Sky is such a burgeoning, blossoming social media.
I get more traffic from Blue Sky than I do from Twitter. I'm just telling you.
Well, yeah, the algorithm on Twitter is anti-web traffic. So yeah, maybe web traffic, but but where am I going to get all the rest of my white supremacist memes if I'm not getting them on Twitter? Like,
how can I fulfill this need? All right.
Yes, I mean it would be a deficiency in my life. So yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.
All right, it's time for the mailbag, and the first question is from Deez, who asks, ask Arif why the on-field NFL product sucks and players cannot even celebrate anymore. I'm going to extend this to they can't even spit on each other anymore. I thought this was America.
Okay, you can't spit. Okay. That's got to be one of the funniest things I've ever seen in an NFL game, and it opened the season.
I worry this is going to create
yourself completely out of the game.
I worry this is going to set up a series of copycats where people are going to just repeat the crime against Dak Prescott.
So you can't like that. That is the point of these kinds of suspensions, right? Like you're not going to do that because you don't want to lose a whole game. And then apparently Mike Florio said multiple games. You can't get suspended for multiple games. So that's why you have that suspension. I don't think Deez is asking about the spit, which was crazy. You can't do that.
I brought up the spit.
Deez was probably asking about the was it Zach Bond, the tackle? No, it was Nolan Smith. The tackle where Nolan Smith flexed over the running back that he tackled. And I watched that. I saw someone tweet out live, it didn't look like something that you'd penalize, but watching it back, I can see it was clearly. And I watched it back. I was like, "What are you talking about? That's just." Yeah, no, you're right about if that's what you're referencing, Deez, which I think you are. You're correct. That is nuts. That is a penalty. And the reason that's a point of emphasis, which is crazy, right? We were told while the penalty was being thrown that it was a point of emphasis, which if it's a point of emphasis, it would suggest that over the past couple of years, taunting has gone woefully underpunished or something like that, which is also nuts to me. That makes no sense. So yeah, I think that the reason that is something that the NFL is focusing on is just take a look at who is on the NFL rules committee. It is a bunch of old billionaires, and it's just so much more important to them that this game be conducted with whatever their vision of decorum is than to understand what people actually want. That's one of the biggest disconnects right now between the way the NFL changes its rules and the way the public perceives the NFL is that they keep on changing a lot of these things that they think the public wants, and they're just so disconnected from it that you get these absurd things. And so it takes forever for an innovation the tweak to the kickoff rule, which I think was a good thing, to actually take hold. And even then they have to look over it multiple times, talk to multiple special teams coaches. Yeah, it's so annoying. The only thing that'll change their mind is some argument about injury, which obviously this has nothing to do with. So yeah, it sucks.
I was at dinner for the first 3/4 of the game, and the only thing that I knew is that somebody got suspended for spitting, and before a snap, by the way. Yeah. It was literally the first. Well,
Well, an Eagles player
recapping
got injured for the season. That was the first play.
Yeah.
But the first from scrimmage before that, like in the Cowboys huddle, which actually I should point out, right? Some people will want this to be said. The full story is that Dak Prescott spit kind of on the ground near the Eagles. We did see some video later corroborating that, which is like the number of camera angles we have is nuts for these primetime games. So Dak spit kind of near the Eagles, whatever. And we first learned about this from like reports on Twitter. And one of those reports was like, my understanding is that Dak was trying to explain to Jalen Carter that he wasn't like, doing something intentional. He was just kind of spitting on the ground. And before he could like finish that explanation, Jalen Carter just spit on him, which in my brain registered as like, sir, I do not spit on you. I spit in your general direction. Like it was like a Romeo and Juliet opening, right? Where like, I do not bite your thumb at thee. I bite my thumb in general. And it's like, what is happening? Why is this? What is going on? But the video kind of showed that like, maybe he was talking a little bit and taunting. And again, taunting shouldn't be enforced as a rule, but it's a little bit, it's still not excusable, but it's a little more understandable how that sequence of events came to be.
It's like this. It's like Shorzy says, if you retaliate, you're going to be the one who gets the penalty. That's just how it works. Yeah. It's the first thing they teach you. I'm reminded
hockey, football, basketball. It's just true.
I am reminded of the line from The Simpsons that it started off like Romeo and Juliet and ended in a tragedy. Let's go to Hitman Stan, who asks, O'Connell's system famously asks the wide receivers to be able to play X, Y, and Z roles. Can Adam Thielen at 35 years old still reasonably threaten the defense in every role, or should we expect his presence on field to narrow the potential play calls at Kevin O'Connell's disposal? It's also worth noting, since this happened in the period between episodes, Adam Thielen did in fact sign with the Vikings, appears to have taken a bit of a pay cut, although hometown discounts or just discounts in general are now questionable at best. We'll leave it at that. Let's not go too deep into that.
Yeah. Adam Thielen was traded to the Vikings. It's been a week since our last show. It hasn't been that long. We had like a bunch of people in the Discord being like, are you canceling the show? It's like, it's been a week. Chill out. I'm just yelling at like people who pay us. That's crazy. I should stop.
This is a wonder. I'm, as the person in charge of the books, I would just like to say, please stop. This is not... We appreciate every one of our listeners. We appreciate our Patreon subscribers, especially.
I love you guys. Just chill out, and I hate you.
If you'd like to be personally called up by Arif, patreon.com/norsecode.
Again, if you're a different Alex Stevenson, it's cool. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Anyway, X, Y, and Z roles. Let's talk about it. So
back to Adam Thielen.
35. Adam Thielen is 35 years old, right? And last year he had a remarkably efficient season. He had over 2 yards per out run, which is really high level, like in terms of an efficiency statistic. It is a little bit difficult because it interacts with stuff like target share. So if you're the only good receiver on your offense, it's going to be a little bit inflated. But whatever, that's a really good efficient statistic. It's one of the better wide receiver statistics we have. But he also played like 75% of his snaps for Carolina last year from the slot, whereas in previous years with the Vikings, he played like 50-55% from the slot. So he played essentially every role. The X, Y, and Z roles in offense typically, the X is the split end, right? So this is the classic like number one big receiver. So, I remember like when we were like podcasting about like the Norv Turner offense, like this was like a big part of like, this is like what Michael Irvin did, or, and it could be like any number of prototypes, but it's like your premier big receiver. So like Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Mike Irvin, like AJ Brown contemporarily, right? That's the idea behind that role. And then the Z is the flanker. And so because of the NFL rules, you can only have like 7 players up on the line of scrimmage, right? And so 5 of those are offensive linemen. 1 is typically a tight end, and the other one is your X receiver. And then everybody else is back. And so that's like your slot receiver, and that's your flanker. And so your flanker is the other receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. that player is more like, and this is not to say that these players haven't played in split end roles, but more like a Stephon Diggs, right? That's kind of, you want to kind of protect them a little bit from press coverage. You play them off the line. So somebody like a Greg Jennings or like a Jake Reed a little bit. These are players that, they're not never going to be up, but you give them a little bit of room to work off of the line of scrimmage, and they tend to be the ones that are in motion a lot or are part of like offensive shifts. And you can match up hunt with them a little bit. But that's kind of what a Z is, a flanker. And then in the question, it says Y. A lot of offensive playbooks will designate the Y as the tight end. But as we've gone from 2 tight end to 3 tight end or 2 running back to whatever. But essentially, he's just saying slot receiver, right? And I think that's fine. I think some offensive nomenclature will call it the F, which used to be like the fullback, but we don't use that anymore. So you can reappropriate that for the slot receiver. For some of it, it's like the U, whatever. It doesn't matter. So the slot receiver, right? In a modern offense, you essentially have access to the full route tree for all 3 of those roles. And so it's not as important as it used to be to have these big, deep downfield plays just for your X receiver. And I think that's what this question is driving at. Can Adam Thielen be a big, deep downfield target? And especially, given that like speed is of like utmost importance to some of the deeper routes that specifically Kevin O'Connell calls, but just what you would demand of that position. And I don't think that that's actually going to be a significant problem, because I don't think that there's any issue with his release off the line of scrimmage. I don't think there's really any issues right now, as far as we can tell, from his ability to beat press coverage. And those are the elements that you're looking for primarily in an X receiver in the modern NFL. Your ability to understand how to create with tight windows or tight space, that's something that is important to that position, and also something that he excels at, right? So I think that it's fine that he, be asked all these roles. Does it limit the offense in some way versus like getting somebody like the guy that the Patriots just got rid of? I forgot his name now. Not Juwan Jennings, a different Juwan Jennings just signed an extension with the 49ers, but he used to play for the 49ers. I forget now. I liked him a lot. But the kind of the difference between, Thielen and somebody who's a little bit younger that's got a little bit more speed or something like that is that you might be able to call for deep routes from that position. So in that sense, I guess it limits the playbook, but if you always have a receiver going deep and you always have a receiver available to you that can go deep, whether that's Jalen Naylor or Justin Jefferson, I don't know that the playbook is limited all that much. And given how much mixing and matching there is in these roles, because of how motion heavy this offense can be, you can always kind of look around and figure out what you need. So in one sense, I guess the offense is a little bit limited, but I think practically it just isn't. So I think it's a good question. I just think that in this context, it's not necessarily the case.
Let's go to Kenneth Allen, who asks, what are the most interesting things to look for in general during the first game of the season? And what are you going to be paying attention to during the Vikings' first game this year?
I think part of it is we do want to take a look at some of these players that have elevated roles or are new to the team, right? So like Ty Felton, Donovan Jackson, or is Ty Felton going to have an offensive role? Is it just going to be special teams? Donovan Jackson, how is he going to do that kind of stuff? That's fair. I think schematically and stuff like that, what do I want to look at aside from JJ McCarthy? I want to see kind of given that it's JJ McCarthy back there and not somebody like a Sam Darnold who has a lot more experience and has historically been a somewhat aggressive quarterback, or Kirk Cousins, obviously, who has a ton of experience, how insistent they are on hunting for big plays. I was on Matthew Calder's podcast, Purple Insider, and he asked how aggressive is Kevin O'Connell going to be, or is he going to try to find ways to kind of ease this quarterback in? And I said, I thought he's going to be pretty aggressive, because even in situations where he's had a lot of reason to kind of bring that quarterback back, someone like a Joshua Dobbs, he hasn't really done it. Or a quarterback that wants to, be aggressive, he kind of encourages it, like Nick Mullins, even though Mullins just doesn't I think that it's just kind of who he is. But I would like to see if that does change, right? If you have a couple more, I call them easy buttons in the offense. And that doesn't usually when people talk about easy buttons in an offense, they mean like play action and stuff like that. And that's not necessarily what I mean. I mean more just like having, check downs and short throws available to you or shorter timing things against like off coverage or something. So I'd look for that, and then kind of defensively just how exposed those quarterbacks are. If it feels like, the pressure's not arriving quickly enough against, a Bears offense that should not be very good at mitigating pressure. If the pressure is not arriving, like how exposed can those cornerbacks be? Because I think that'll tell us a lot overall. Like whether or not those passes are completed by Caleb Williams, we can probably tell how exposed this offense is going to be if within 2.5 seconds, there's not either immediate danger to the quarterback or an open receiver. So that's probably what I look for. I don't know that there's anything kind of just in the first game that there are these long-term trends I want to see. Like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see if the blitz rate changes, but it's probably not going to tell us much because Brian Flores has seen Caleb Williams specifically before. And whether or not Ben Johnson has like answers to this offense in the context of being a Bears coach instead of a Lions coach. But yeah, I don't know. I think after 4 games, we'll have a lot of answers to questions that we forgot to ask, and just like know more about, both the offense and the defense.
Kenneth Allen also asks, for our Reefs cover-up corner, who would you least like to be investigated by or interviewed by? Pablo Torre, Ken Klippenstein, or Isaac Chotner?
Okay, that's crazy. Kenny Clips, shouts to my guy Kenny Clips. I love him. I also love Pablo Torre. Holy crap, what a podcast. Least is Isaac Chotner. And so the reason is this. Pablo Torre will dig up stuff that you had no idea anyone had access to, much less him, right? That's crazy. That's incredible. Wow. Deep dive, incredible journalism. He can find out if you're like violating the salary cap or whatever, right? Like just incredible stuff. Great journalism. That would be terrifying. Kenny Clips, pretty similar, although a lot of that is like FOIA requests, so Freedom of Information Act requests, and which is not to say he doesn't do great journalism. He does. I'm just saying the area of journalism that he operates in doesn't really interact with what I do that much. At least I hope so. So that's not as concerning. He's broken a bunch of great news, and some of it isn't FOIA related. A lot of it's like, people are in the military are upset with the direction the military is going, and so they securely and anonymously contact him, and he breaks some news regarding that. Like he's good at that, but it's also just like not in the area that concerns me. Isaac Chotner is terrifying because he works in like a bunch of different arenas. And the thing about him, if you ever like see a Chotner interview go viral, like it's usually screenshots of texts, and in the screenshots, what he has done is he's asked a couple of questions to get somebody to kind of put out their initial line, their initial statement, kind of what the press release would say, right? And then he gives them just enough rope to hang themselves, and then he asks 1 or 2 simple questions, and you look like the biggest idiot on the planet. And if I'm in a spot where one of these 3 journalists is going to signal my doom, I would rather it not be me, right? Like I would rather it not be me that sinks me. And that's what Chotner does. I would rather Pablo Torre find a document that I've been trying to hide for 5 years, as opposed to Chotner just asking me 3 questions and me immediately folding. So that's my answer to that. Not that I'm covering anything up. We shouldn't have a cover up corner because there's nothing to worry about.
Not yet, no. Raul asks, who is BoobDoc01 and is ESPN dramatically overpaying Adam Schefter? Easily one of my favorite stories of the last week or so.
So funny. Okay, so in the show notes, we'll link this SB Nation article that kind of goes into greater detail than I thought, because I thought I knew the story, but James put this link in the show notes, and I clicked on it and I read through it, and there's like more to it than I even knew. So, BoobDoc01 is a cryptocurrency influencer who is currently in the process of shilling NFTs called D-Burps, I want to say, which is cool. D-Burps are going to be the next Bonk Fund success story. That is a quote from one of his tweets. It is Dust Burp. Oh, sorry, it's not an NFT. It's a cryptocurrency that's different in a material but also a relevant sense. Yeah. But yeah, so he said, this is such a good tweet. So before any news about the Micah Parsons trade officially broke, and by officially I mean from like established and credible insiders, he tweets out, Dr. Feelgood at boop.01 tweets out, so the breast enhancement community is rather close-knit. My DFW colleagues are texting, okay, we're still maintaining the iTunes rating, are texting the blank out of me right now saying that Micah Parsons to Green Bay deal is cemented and both teams are playing it up for all the PR they can get. Take it for what it's worth, but the wives can't keep a secret at all. And I believe this was a day before the trade was announced, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's something beautiful about that, I think. that is just like, because so many people who would have access to this knowledge have spouses who've gone through breast enhancement of some sort. Because of that, it has leaked out that Micah Parsons has been traded. It's beautiful. But also reading the story, I did not realize that in the Green Bay Packers subreddit, someone else also the same day said, hey, this is third-hand knowledge. I don't know. I live in the Dallas area, and a friend of mine is next-door neighbors with one of the Cowboys team physical therapists. Supposedly, he did some work with Micah Parsons today, and the word is the Packers have a deal in place. Just need him to agree to the contract offer, which he says averages $45 million a year. Now, both of these guys have never attempted to break NFL news before. Dr. Feelgood, Boop.01, he is laser focused on this cryptocurrency. He is not tweeted about the NFL. Username Gridiron Gamer, who has been in the Packers subreddit for 12 years, has never, produced a rumor as far as we can tell. And so both of them on the same day were like, hey, this is going to happen. And then it did happen, which is great. And then also the piece links to what enemy of the show, Justice Mosqueda said, which a week before the trade, he was like, hey, I think it's likely that Micah Parsons signs with Dallas, but I've been reading just a truly psychotic amount of tea leaves. And if it doesn't happen, it's absolutely Cowboys to Packers. There's no question about it. And he breaks it down in his own SB Nation piece. It's truly incredible how much this leaked. Is Adam Schefter out of a job? No. He's protected. He survived Mr. Editor. He will survive Boop.01.
He's apparently attempting to survive the whole red zone commercial thing, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was required to tweet, which is not an excuse, but I think he was required to tweet. Okay, so for people who aren't familiar, Red Zone announced that, or someone announced that Red Zone will have commercials, which technically they did have some commercials last year, but everyone was really mad about it, which you were right to be mad. The tagline is literally, now begin 7 hours of commercial-free football, which Scott Hansen apologized for, and everyone was like, well, hey, kid. Scott's 40 something. Hey kid, it's not your fault. Don't worry about it. It's not on you. Everyone was super nice to him.
Yeah, nobody has anything mean to say about him. No.
Yeah, right. And so it was announced that they would kind of continue this. So Scott Hansen goes to the Pat McAfee show, and he talks about it a little bit. And McAfee, also an ESPN employee, right, is doing as much as he can. And for those who don't remember, the NFL just bought a 10% stake in ESPN, and they didn't buy it as much with money as they did with access to NFL Network products. I mean, they did also spend money, but ESPN gets access to Red Zone, so they can distribute it upon through ESPN channels like ESPN Plus or Disney Plus. I don't know, something. So they own it, but the NFL Network and NFL Media, I should say, NFL Media still controls all the programming for it. So technically not ESPN's decision to continue running commercials. It's NFL Media's decision, to the degree that you feel it's important to separate these two entities that are now wholly intertwined. Right. So everyone's mad, right? Because hey, I am paying a lot of money for this product. You already are making money from it. And so you monetizing it by diminishing my experience sucks. Cory Doctorow has a Doctorow. I should know how to pronounce this guy's name. He's like a legend. Doctorow. Let's just go with that. Cory Doctorow has a term for it, which screw the iTunes rating. It's enshittification, where products just kind of get worse over time. That's kind of what's happening here. There's a whole process behind it. I've super oversimplified it. It's actually really interesting, but that's what's happening here. And Adam Schefter tweeted out like, "Hey, if you like count up the amount of time that there will be commercials on Red Zone, it'll be like 1 to 2 minutes, less than 0.25%, something like that, right?" He's like, "Yeah, so Red Zone is actually going to have like you're barely going to notice it." And the one thing I know about people is that if you have provided an uninterrupted experience and they get used to that for over a decade, and then you slightly interrupt the experience, they will super notice the hell out of it. There's just no question about it. And like, that's just like, it's just not how psychology works, right? Like, people complained about how much Taylor Swift was shown in NFL games, and that was also like 1 minute out of like 3 hours, right? Like the amount of actual time it was very small, but if you're not used to it, it is a ton. It grabs your attention. There's a ton of studies on that kind of stuff. There's like a study, this is a long time ago, I don't know if it's true anymore, but like if you showed people like a movie cast, right? And it was like, I think it was like 11% women and like 89% men or something like that. And you look at a scene and that's the distribution of dialogue. And you ask them later what percentage, men spoke and women spoke, because like the whole history of movies had, men taking on these like leading roles and dominating the conversation and being the stars and the protagonists and stuff like that. They would overestimate the amount of time and dialogue that women had in those in those circumstances, or even in crowd shots in movies. Like, it's just like if you're not used to it, you're gonna notice. So that's not gonna help Adam. And as soon as it happens, people are gonna screenshot it, video record it, and tweet out about it and complain about it. And Adam, you're very good at what you do. I feel like I can't respect you, but this doesn't help. Like this. I can't, like, they shouldn't have made you do that, but also you shouldn't have done it, because they can't make you get paid like $10 million a year or whatever it is. They can't make you do anything you don't want to do. You shouldn't have done that. That's so stupid.
Well, speaking of interrupting a product that's gone without commercials for 10 years and then just subtly bringing it in, let's talk about our new sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the app that's going to provide you with the best chance of fixing your mental health. Check out today.
Yeah, that's definitely the language in the ad copy. Fixing your mental health.
Use promo code Carson Wentz for 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com. Let's go to Jogger, who asks, so Harrison Smith had COVID, right? And everyone's just being weirdly cagey about it?
He was gone for a month, man. That's not what happened.
I'm confident I got the Rona like a month ago, and I still have a lingering cough that knocks me out. Like, it's possible, but not super likely.
Yeah, also, I mean, like, no offense, James, but Harrison Smith is built a bit different than you.
No. Other than being a couple weeks older than him, a couple years. No, that's not how any of this works.
And hey, no, this was not. I'm not calling you unfit. I'm just saying, he has access to better medical resources.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
Well,
right? He's got
government resources and all that. I get it. It's
yeah, like he immediately could get Paxlovid, right? Like that's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. No. Based on what I heard, that's not what it is. But what I heard is unconfirmed, so I'm not gonna go into it.
Yeah. Next question. Will Melvin asks, who could last longer in a filibuster, Arif, Luke Braun, or Matthew Collar?
I'm actually really curious what James's answer is, but I've got an answer.
I think that Arif would eventually be the snake that eats its own tail. Like, eventually he would just sit there and go, what? I just said something for 2 hours. I don't know what. I'm slightly confused. I need help.
And you think Matthew Collar or Luke Braun wouldn't have the introspection to realize that they were talking for 2 hours?
The disconnect would be truly amazing. I don't know. And Collar would be an interesting tell. I think Luke would do a fine job. I think you would be able to outlast Luke Braun and likely Matthew Collar.
Yeah, so I think that's true as well. I think for 2 primary reasons. One is that I think out of the 3 of us, I have a tendency to over-explain. I don't know if you've noticed this, James, but I have a tendency to over-explain more than most people in most situations, and I tend to use a lot of words to get there. 2, successful filibusters are fueled by like spite and hate. And while I think all 3 of us could effectively be characterized as haters, especially Collar, I think that like I definitely qualify as a hater who can be fueled by spite. And I think that would allow me to just pull out a phone book and just start reading it. Like, I think I could just do it.
Yeah, you are a petty little man, and I appreciate that about you.
Well, I mean, I'm 7 feet tall, but like I understand what you mean.
It's short in spirit. Milo asks, how big... that's an episode title. Milo, yeah. Milo asks, how big of a concern is the defensive back room? Is it sufficient? Is it proficient? Is it deficient?
Okay. It's deficient, I guess. I don't know. It is a thin defensive back room. And it also isn't very top heavy, which I guess just makes it bad, right? You've got one good player, Byron Murphy. You've got one player that I think you'd be reasonably confident has like a pretty wide range of outcomes in Isaiah Rodgers. And one player you'd have to like convince me of, right? Which is Jeff Okudah. And then after, like, who is on the team after that? Like, it's just not, I mean, like, I know it's like Dwight McLaughlin, right? But like, that's not good, right? Harrison Smith is coming off of a mysterious injury. We don't know how good Theo Jackson is. So it's Josh Metellus, who's fantastic at a lot of different things, but not necessarily at the things that if you're missing other defensive backs, he can fill in for, right? So it's sad. It's not good. And it might not, Brian Flores' whole deal is that don't worry about that. That doesn't matter. So we'll see, but it is a concern.
Next question is from Hallie, whatever.
I think it's Haley.
Yeah, let's just go with that. For a Reefs debate corner, which Minnesota Viking do you think would be the best policy debater and why?
I would have to go. I want to say Max Brosmer because he's from Minnesota. Minnesota has a pretty decent policy debate team now, but Michigan has a phenomenal debate team. So I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy. It requires poise under pressure. It requires the ability to interpret information very quickly. It requires the ability to kind of dissect what's happening in front of you. I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy. Plus, he's got like a lot of poise in front of the camera, right? I think that presentation ability matters. Now, before the show, I did try to figure out who spoke the fastest, but then I realized that James would misinterpret that to mean that is a requirement to be an effective policy debater, which has not been true over the past decade of college debate, where a lot of very, very successful teams have spoken at conversational rates instead of at very high speeds. And James seems convinced that is the only skill you need. But if that were true, I would have won multiple national tournaments because I was the fastest speaker in the circuit when I was in college. And that did not do me as much good as you might hope. So
I'm not going to keep going on this topic because you called me a racist earlier. So I've learned my lesson, and we're just going to go to the next question.
That's right.
I'm okay with being called a racist on the pre-show, just not on the regular show. So
just don't have a recording of it.
That's different. That's you got to pay for that. So listen to that and have a Reef make fun of you personally at patreon.com/NorseCode. Kyle Segal asks, good morrow, gents. Got a random query. Let's say you've been on the run from the law in the woods and found a militant band of individuals disenfranchised by your state's total collapse into fascism. Is being a cook or being a lookout a better contribution to this society?
Okay, again, a lot of curious I mean, he didn't say this time it was hypothetical, but a lot of curious hypothetical questions from Kyle the past 3 weeks. And again, I always regret not being able to get to his question until we record, because it always seems like they're very pressing. But I would say probably a cook, because if you're the only cook, you get a little bit of time. You get a couple of mess ups right before someone's like, "Hey, you can't be cooking anymore," unless you like poison someone. Obviously, it depends on the degree. But you get a couple of mess ups because you're the only cook. You're the only one who knows how to cook. It's an important skill. Lookout is not a super high, unless I'm like missing something. It's not a high skill job. If you mess up once, that's it. You're done. And so I think it's just more valuable to be a cook. Also, like, my understanding, based off of kind of reading military fiction, which is identical to having military experience.
We've always said that.
Yeah. No, I don't see a problem with that. I can't imagine any of our listeners being upset with that. Unless you're like a truly bad cook, you're like everybody's favorite guy. The lookout is no one's favorite guy, not because they're annoying and they suck. It's just you don't remember that guy. But like the guy who feeds you rules. That is awesome. So yeah, be the chef. I mean, be good at it, but like be the cook.
Based on my experience of playing Red Dead Redemption 2 for a lot more hours than I'm willing to admit, be Pearson. Don't the cook. Don't be the one of the nameless people who are just sitting and watching and waiting. So Pearson is the person you should emulate, as long as you're useful. My 4-year-old plans to replace me asks, question for Arif's AI corner. One of Arif's friends, Ed Zitron, hates AI and will regularly declare that it's killing the economy and will crash to the ground. Does Arif feel like he's betraying his friend by using AI to draft his Hell League teams?
Oh my, okay.
And what assurances do we have that you're not using AI with your other work, wide left, Norse code, etc., when you're using it for fantasy football? This is an important question. I had 13.
It's not actually an important question.
13 drafts back to back on Monday. Arif, how many of those did you attend online? How many drafts did you go in? Because you're signed up for a couple of leagues.
Yeah, so I did receive some emails on Monday that gave me grades for the draft, and I believe I received 2 such emails. So I believe someone with my team name had 2 drafts to attend. But I will say that Ed Zitron is very specific about the type. In fact, he goes into great detail about the types of AI he's talking about. He's not talking about, typical machine learning. He's talking about generative AI, typically in the large language model kind of arena of machine learning. Not a lot of like neurolinguistic AI or neural network AI or any of the other algorithmic approaches to solving problems or big data that we've had over the years. So there's a lot of different types of AI, things that we call AI. I don't really super love the terminology. In fact, it's become so diluted that we had to invent another term to get at what we originally meant with AI, which was AGI, which is great. But that's not what auto drafts are run on. And so you don't have to worry about that. And also, like, hey, man, if you can't detect whether or not I'm using AI in my writing or on a podcast, that just sounds like that's on you, man. That's like, at some point, like, if you can't figure that out, that's actually, that's a bad precedent. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But like, come on, it's pretty clear I'm not using AI.
I was trying to describe the Uncanny Valley in terms of animation to my fiance this evening, and I had mentioned how it's getting to that point now with receiving emails at work or seeing ads on Twitter or Facebook, and how they're like all kind of looking alike. And how I'm seeing these, it's not even like generative AI images, but like just the generated typing that's coming out, the specific images, the fact they're writing like no human speaks. And like that is like, and if in case you're unfamiliar with the term the Uncanny Valley, it's referring to an animation thing where you're looking at something and there's something wrong and your body can't figure it out.
So the reason it's called the Uncanny Valley is if you created a chart of like how realistic, especially like a human specifically, like if you were drawing a human, how realistic it is and how much people enjoy interacting with it, right? You would generally have a graph sloping upwards, right? The more it looks like a human, the more you like it. But at some point, in between looks incredibly close to a human and looks kind of like a human, there's a sudden dip in that chart and it goes way down because you're really uncomfortable with like how close to a human it is, but how clearly not a human it is. And we've understood this overall concept for much longer than we've had a term for it. A lot of our horror movies are based off of this concept where like the eyes are a little bit too big. You'll still see it in a bunch of horror, or the hair is a little bit odd. Like it's like specifically we've designed a lot of creepy and monstrous things to fit into the Uncanny Valley even before we had a name for the concept. And it's amazing that we have now created a machine that just does that for us automatically without us wanting it to.
Yeah. And that, like, reading those, or it's like seeing emails. Like tonight I got 2 work emails that were basically like, that's clear she's just using AI. She's just like, hey, these are the things I would like you to say. Please put it in English. Please put it in a way they will understand.
I'll link to like a video or two about how you can spot AI generated text. I see it all the time, so it's not an issue for me to figure it out. So maybe I was being a little bit unfair. I see it all the time now, but like, and they'll probably like fix some of these things, right? But the fundamental problem with the way that AI writes or speaks or whatever is it's built off of sort of, it is not entirely accurate the way I'm going to put it. It's built off of sort of an averaging of a lot of cadences in the ways that we talk. So you type in a couple of words and just like your phone from 15 years ago using T9, it'll predict the next word based off of the most common word given all of these contexts. And one of the things about large language models is that they have a lot more pieces of context to draw from than your phone did 15 years ago when they're predicting the next word, and they'll put that in there. Now, you can change the randomness of it. It's called the temperature, and it's not necessarily going to choose the most likely word. It might choose the second or third or fourth, and it'll determine that pseudo-randomly. But the overall outcome of this is that even though it'll never produce the same text twice, because it is picking based off of certain frequencies of words to use based off of the previous words used in the question that you asked and all of these other pieces and tags attached to words and context and data, it still tends towards the most average thing that a human can say. And I don't know if you've ever seen these, like, I tried to find the most average person in America type like articles or videos, but no one fits the category. 0 people are perfectly average in all respects. And nobody writes like the most average writing thing. Yeah. It's inhuman and uncomfortable. And also I hate the tone. The tone is like the most annoying passive-aggressive office email, but again and again and again and again, except for some reason it likes you. And that I don't know why, but that's worse even still. I would rather the guy writing this passive-aggressive email hates me. Like, why are you talking like that, man?
It's every time I see it now, and I see it everywhere, especially after trying to do promotions for a festival on social media, and every other ad from every other restaurant or every other thing, it all looks the same. There's like little image in there for no good reason. There's a bunch of bullet points when you've never used bullet points before. Like,
and sometimes the bullet points are emojis and no one does that.
Right. Like, that's just... it drives me nuts, and I'm sitting here, and every time I get one of these emails, it's like I'm looking at an animated human whose face is wrong, and you're just stuck there, like you just pity your stomach. Just, this is not Also, we've gone off the rails. I just want to point that out. After this 10-minute AI rant, I just want to point out that we are, in fact, off the rails.
We did just give some advice on how to survive in a militia. So hopefully you figured that out.
That's actually just good advice for everybody. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah. One last thing about that. I think my favorite bit in like Reddit comments is when like someone is signaling that they're pretending to use AI is certainly I can help you with that. You're right to notice that XYZ. That's really important context. Now let's figure this out. Just the perfect AI sentence. It makes me die every time.
Let's go to Tank B, who asks for Arif's animated, not anime corner. In a recent episode, your co-host ruled that K-pop Demon Hunters was an anime. However, the film is a Sony Picture Imagine work that was...
ImageWorks.
You're right. ImageWorks, apologies. That was animated in Canada. As there is no, quote, Canadian anime, that means that this animated film is, in fact, simply a Western cartoon with Korean-esque influences on character and scene design. Why do you allow James to bully and gaslight you like this? Do you need help?
I think any interpretation that the listeners draw from our interactions on this podcast that produce the conclusion that James is an abuser and I am a victim, I want to encourage. I do want you all to think that that might be the case. But in addition to that, I because I don't wade into these debates, because I'm just not interested in anime. I don't know anything about it. I don't watch it. I've seen a couple of my friends bring up this discussion that, what is anime? Is it necessarily the case that something animated in the United States can't be an anime? Is what's the one that everyone uses all the time? I think it's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. Is that an anime? And a lot of people think it is an anime, despite the fact that it was animated entirely in the United States, because it draws on anime and it reads more like an anime that has Western influences than a Western cartoon that has anime influences. And then, of course, people will ask, like, well, if it can't be a Western animation, if it can only be animated in Japan, well, most of the things that people call anime are now animated in Korea or even China or even Vietnam. Do those count as anime? How much outsourcing needs to be done for it to count as anime? If you take a look at Western animation in the United States, most of the frames that you see animated are actually animated across the Pacific Ocean. Most of the non-keyframe animations that will occur in most of the animation that you see in the United States and in Canada will have actually been animated elsewhere, even if it's an American studio that lists credits to American animators who absolutely deserve, that credit and the work that they put in. But most animation in the United States and in Canada, a lot of the individual frames, most of those will be done overseas, and particularly like in Korea and China and like Vietnam and I believe Thailand. And so wouldn't that make everything anime? So I don't really know, the answers to these questions. Does anime refer to a style? Does it refer to particular tropes? Does it refer to a genre? If it does refer to a style, because there's other anime that don't look like what people call anime. I don't know the name. Something like Panties and Stocking, I guess, is supposed to look different. I don't know. It's weird. So I don't know the answers to this. This is why I asked James. I figured that he might know a little bit better, but I see that James's answer has drawn a little bit of controversy. I wouldn't know. I haven't watched K-pop Demon Hunters or listened to the soundtrack 80,000 times or gone to the sing-along where they broke box office records or not records, but they won the weekend. Despite only being in half the theaters of some of the other releases that weekend. I wouldn't know anything about it. I don't know anything about K-pop Demon Hunters. But I would say that, the definition that people want to use for anime seems to be a little bit outdated, and it no longer refers to kind of the notions that people bring up in their heads when they talk about anime. And so it sounds like the stricter definitions that people use are maybe a little bit inappropriate for these kinds of discussions. But I wouldn't know. I haven't traced the history of animation or done any research on that kind of thing as it pertains to animation coming out of Japan. So it's tough, especially because it sounded like that a lot of Japanese animation was initially influenced by a lot of Western animation, and Disney in particular. So what is Western? What is not Western? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. So it was less about James gaslighting me, which again, I want to remind you, he does every day. And more about the complexities of this kind of world that I just haven't explored any of at all. Like, is My Hero Academia another? I guess it's an anime that's based off of Western comic book tropes. Does that count as an anime that was primarily produced in Japan, even though it has Western tropes in it? I wouldn't know. I haven't watched it 3 or 4 times.
If I'm gaslighting you, I really need to just start bullying you more. If that's if I have permission to do this now, fantastic.
No, you don't have permission. No, that's bad. It's bad. You shouldn't do it.
I am
but the fact is that you do
conversation that I should be doing it more if I'm going to be blamed for it. So a second
you're
jet
already,
has hit
you're
Drew Bledsoe asked,
like,
for the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium Corner. Mortally wounded space marines of great honor and importance to the chapter will sometimes have their warped and disfigured bodies interred into a cybernetic coffin to pilot bipedal war machine known as the Dreadnoughts. What NFL coach, which NFL coach, would you have stuffed into these nightmares to continue coaching well beyond the time mortal flesh can withstand?
It kind of depends, right? Because a lot of the coaches that have been historically important are like still alive. So like that one's kind of tough.
Does Belichick count as alive?
Yeah, that was the first thing I was thinking of. Like, could we get like good Belichick? Because like what's happened has been. Just like it bears, I feel kind of bad. I'd never thought I'd feel bad for Belichick, but like we talk about someone who's being gaslit. It's this guy, right? By this 24-year-old. I don't mean the backup quarterback. I mean his girlfriend. They are actually the same age.
The comment that the last time they had lost by this much is when she was back in middle school. It was 11 years ago, but still.
Yeah, which is like, so which like, again, like, is he the creep or the victim or both? Like, I don't know. I hate this whole situation. Anyway, so my point of contact with this is not, I assume this is like Warhammer, is not that universe, but a very similar concept in StarCraft, the Dragoon. Although like the Space Marines are more like the Terran Marines, and the Dragoon is a Protoss thing. Doesn't matter. But I would Bill Belichick, good version. Paul Brown. I mean, all of these guys were probably problematic, so let's ignore that part. Paul Brown, Don Shula. I think those would be fun and good. It's just good to have good ones, right? But as we kind of go into kind of the more fun ones, I mean, Wade Phillips is still alive, but I mean, he'd be kind of fun to see try head coaching again, because I actually think he would be good at it.
Andy Reid would be interesting in that spot.
Oh, would younger Andy Reid? Oh, that's interesting. Oh my gosh. Okay, I like that.
Andy Reid, Gilman, right after he discovered time management. Because they were two completely different Andy Reids.
Oh, completely. Yeah. But like peak Eagles Andy Reid versus peak now Andy Reid, I think is really curious. Sid Gilman for sure. I believe he has passed away, right? I think he entered the Hall of Fame posthumously. Denny Green, obviously, no question. Don Coryell. John Madden. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it's Vince Lombardi. I think you have to, right? So those are my answers.
Let's go to our final
Bill
question.
Walsh. Jesus Christ, Bill Walsh.
Oh, yeah, Bill Walsh. Let's go to our final question from Yannick Eckhart, who asks, I don't know what a Labubu is, and I also don't want to know what a Labubu is. Mm-hmm. Without revealing anything about Labubu, in your answer, because I don't want to know, can you convince me that I should get invested and make Labubu the focal point of my entire life?
My favorite thing about this question is that every time Labubu is spelled out, there is a question mark after it. And me reading it, I had to figure out if that was the end of a sentence, and it never was.
Nope. I had to read it a couple times to make sure I didn't stop.
But no, you don't have to know what a Labubu is in order to get invested in it. So I don't know how old you are, Yannick, but if you remember Beanie Babies, if you had a bunch of Beanie Babies and sold them around the year 2000, you would have made so much money. The same thing is true of Bitcoin, like right about now, or tulips in 18th century Netherlands. These are all gold rushes that you never wanted to miss out on. Obviously, a couple of people held on to some tulips for a little bit too long, and it didn't go well for them. But you're better than that. You're smarter than them. You can do that with Labubus. You can get invested in Stanley Cups before the Stanley Cup craze. You can get invested in NFTs before NFTs died.
I was going to say, right? it's like an NFT, but like not a digital thing, like a physical thing in front of you.
It physically exists, which is like way better.
And they're somehow less ugly than the NFTs were.
Okay, that is crazy, and that is true. But
there's less apes involved.
Yeah, here's the thing.
No, my apes!
All gone. If someone steals your apes, you have no recourse. You can't go to the police. They'll be like, what are you talking about? And also, no. And also, can you prove that? No. But if someone steals your Labubu, you can go to the police and they'll be like, oh, someone physically stole it. Well, I mean, the police will never help you. But in theory...
after they take your car, you can have a conversation about your Labubu.
Right. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, we'll get right on top of this." But like that's physically that's an item, right? And that is subject to property laws in theory, unlike an NFT, which is typically just a hyperlink. If it's not even. I don't want to get into what NFTs are, but like
screenshotable image.
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, so NFTs have already died, so I don't have to explain it too much, but I want to say it again because it's so stupid. Almost every single NFT that has ever been minted is not of the image that you're looking at. It is of a link to the image because the amount of space it takes up on the ledger. So all of cryptocurrency and all of the blockchain stuff. The blockchain is just a ledger. And so all of that is very expensive. As you know, like the cryptocurrencies are insanely expensive. That's because all of the processing power it takes to verify and calculate all of the things that need to go on the ledger, it takes a lot of time and electricity and money, kind of like AI. And so the longer the data or the bigger the data that has to be put in the ledger, the massively more expensive it is to put on the ledger, in this case, minting an NFT. So the shortcut that they use is not to put the code for the image into the ledger, because if you did that, every single time that NFT transferred hands, it would take an insane amount of money to verify the transaction. So they just put a really small piece of data, which is like the URL, which means it's not actually the image. If someone changes if it goes to www.pictureofanape.com and it's a picture of one ape and that's the NFT you bought access to the URL. You didn't buy anything, but in theory, you bought access to the URL. So somebody who controls what is on that webpage could just change the image one day, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's it. That's how stupid that was. Now, Labubu is so much better because you just have, it's just that it is the thing that you physically have. I can't believe I said that, but it is better.
That is truly a baffling series of words that you just put together.
I am so mad at myself.
You should be. We all should be, actually. This episode started with you taking shots at patrons, and now we're taking shots
One patron. Maybe, hypothetically, one patron.
So with that is going to be the end of this episode of Norse Code. I'm just forcing it to end now. Arif, what do you have to plug?
My apparent hatred for Alex Stevenson. No, at Wide Left Football, we've got a couple of pieces up. I've got one evaluating the Michael Parsons trade. Also, Matt Freese has turned in his piece on Carson Wentz, so that'll be up pretty soon. I don't know what he said, and I did not direct him to say it. I'm just going to publish, like, if he's like Carson Wentz is actually better than JJ McCarthy, that's going to go up. I don't know what he said. I'm going to assume he didn't because I hired him because he's smart, but I don't know. So that's going to go up soon. Alex Katzen is covering the Chargers game in Brazil, which is the next day as of this recording. And his recounting of his trip, and I don't know, maybe the game, is going to be... I can't put it into words. It's incredible. The stuff that he suffered through to get to Brazil, I could not be happier as a boss to make an employee go through that. It's going to produce excellent content. So you want to see that over at Wide Left Football. I was also on the Heat to Call podcast. I'll probably put a link to that in the show notes. But yeah, check out Wide Left Football.
That's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back on Monday night to talk about, hopefully, the win over the Bears. So, for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that the horrors persist. And so does Carson Wentz. And we will be back soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... And he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.